streets of Somerville.
Is canceling more than $11 billion in funding for a wide range of pandemic-related work, including COVID-19 testing, vaccination, and community health workers. NPR has also learned the National Institutes of Health has terminated a $577 million project to find new drugs to fight the virus that causes COVID, as well as other viruses that have the potential to cause the next pandemic. The administration says the decision was made because the pandemic is over and the terminations will save billions of dollars. Researchers say the COVID virus is still spreading and the moves leave the country more vulnerable to future pandemics. Rob Stein, NPR News.
President Trump says he'll impose fresh 25% tariffs on all imports of foreign cars. He says this will begin April 2nd, the same day a raft of other U.S. tariffs will be imposed. French officials say the tariffs leave the European Union with no other choice but to retaliate. New Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says the Trump tariffs are a direct attack on Canadian auto workers. In the U.S., the United Auto Workers Union says it supports these Trump tariffs. Israel's government has passed a law that overhauls the country's judiciary. The move has sparked mass street protests. NPR's Daniel Estrin has more from Tel Aviv.
Israelis have protested in the streets this week against a law that Parliament has now passed. The law changes how Israeli judges are appointed to the bench. They used to be selected by a committee of non-elected professionals and lawmakers. Under the new law, politicians will control judicial appointments. Israel's right-wing government says judges have too much power. Its attempts to remake the courts sparked massive pro-democracy street protests 2 years ago. When the Israel-Hamas war broke out, the government said it would pause the judicial overhaul. Now the government has resumed its efforts. Civil society groups are petitioning Israel's Supreme Court to overturn the new law. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The opposition party in South Sudan says its leader, the country's vice president, has been arrested. The United Nations warns the arrest comes as South Sudan is back on the brink of civil war. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. As we heard from our colleagues in Washington, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention yesterday pulled over $11 billion in COVID-19 pandemic response grants meant for state and community health centers. Officials at DOGE say the Department of Health and Human Services say the agency will, quote, no longer waste billions of taxpayer dollars responding to a non-existent pandemic that Americans moved on from years ago. Unquote. And in response, Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey says the grants are expected to bring nearly $100 million to Massachusetts over the next year, and much of that money has already been promised in the state. Healey condemned the DOGE decision, calling it yet another example of President Trump and Elon Musk undermining the health and well-being of the people of Massachusetts as well as people across this nation. New data showing a rise in juvenile offenders being arrested in Massachusetts. There was little change in the numbers entering the state's juvenile justice system last year, but more youths are coming in through the use of physical custody instead of a court summons, the preferred method under state policy. Melissa Threadgill is with the State Office of the Child Advocate.
So misdemeanor assault and battery is a great example. And so that suggests that it's not that the kids are coming in with more serious crimes. It might be that the adults are making different decisions about what to do with these youth when they enter the system.
The state's Juvenile Justice Policy and Data Board, which issued the report, is recommending the police department re-examine the arrest policies for more opportunities to divert youth from the system. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the estate of Joan B. Kroc, whose bequest serves as an enduring investment in the future of public radio and seeks to help NPR produce programming that meets the highest standards of public service in journalism and cultural expression.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Yeakin. Welcome to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Our Friday music provided by the Handel and Haydn Society. Plus, we're going to speak with NPR's David Folkenflik, their media guy, for our media analysis segment. We're going to be talking about yesterday's hearings about spending at government spending, about PBS and NPR. We're part of NPR, Jim.
I think we are.
Good morning.
And by the way, after the hearing, the chair of the Doge subcommittee, Marjorie Green, did a press conference. I'm going to bring you at 12:55 for our two more things.
Oh, my God.
I will share with you some of her amazing performance at that press conference. So yesterday we saw for the first time security camera footage, horrifying, of Tufts student Rumeysa Ozturk being surrounded, handcuffed, and taken away by masked ICE officials. Attorney General Andrea Cabral, I think it was in the Washington Post, said it was like a kidnapping. It was a kidnapping. She'd been living in Somerville with a valid student visa that officials say was revoked, allegedly because of some pro-Palestinian op-ed she wrote for the Tufts daily newspaper. Today she's being held in the Louisiana detention center. Louisiana, Marjorie, Mahmoud Khalil. That's where they send him, apparently in violation of a judge's order that she not be taken out of Massachusetts. You know, the good news, I guess, is in the horror of this is thousands of people showed up in Somerville last night to protest, and this, of course, follows the 370 migrants detained by ICE in Boston last week and the case, as I mentioned, of Mahmoud Khalil at Columbia. The text and phone lines are open at 877-301-8970. On this show, we've had a lot of conversations about what it's going to take to push communities to protest the extremes of Trump 2.0 in our community. Is this footage the breaking point for you? And if you're part of some polls, up to 65% who support Trump on his mass deportation policy generally, do you support what happened yesterday to Ozturk? Is this the kind of thing you support? Our number is 877-301-8970. The footage is horrifying, terrifying.
The footage is, these are a bunch of men. There might be a couple of women there, but it looks like a bunch of men. Most of them have masks on. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why they're wearing masks.
I would say to create more fear. Why is the Patriot Front wear masks?
Well, police officers, when they arrest people, don't have masks on. I mean, they're in their uniforms.
This is Tom Homan's brigade.
Right. Well, this is the United States of America.
Oh, really?
I still like to think that I'm living in the United States of America, where law enforcement are supposed to identify themselves. Apparently, some of these people did not even have any identifying marks on them to indicate where they were from, and they were wearing masks. Anyway, if you didn't see the footage of this, here's some of the sound from a home security camera that caught these ICE agents and Homeland Security people ambushing and arresting this Tufts student as she was on her way for a fast-breaking Ramadan dinner. She's a Muslim. She's from Turkey. Here it is.
Please, where the police? Yeah, you don't look like it. Why are you hiding your face? Why are you hiding your face? Yeah.
It's disgraceful. I mean, really, you said this is America. You know, there's almost anything we talk about, and we really appreciate that people who support Trump's policies are kind enough to be willing to call the show because they know generally we're not going to be on the same side. I'm dying to hear somebody say this is not morally and in every other way grotesque. I mean, absolutely grotesque. By the way, she was not a leader of the pro-Palestinian efforts there. And by the way, had she been a leader, that's not a crime. That's her ability to speak her point of view.
Here's her alleged wrongdoing. She co-authored an op-ed in the Tufts student newspaper in March of 2024, criticizing the university's response to the pro-Palestinian movement. The op-ed was written by 4 students, endorsed by 32 others, argued against the school's rejection of the Senate resolutions there. They wanted to hold Israel accountable for clear violations of international law. I mean, there are millions of American citizens, millions of people who are not American citizens who are upset by what's happened in Gaza. That doesn't make them pro-Hamas and anti-Semites or anti-Israel.
And by the way, if they're pro-Hamas, which obviously would not make us happy, if they're not providing material support to Hamas, you're allowed to say unpopular things in this country.
Well, you're not allowed.
She's legally...
You're not allowed anymore,
well, not allowed under
obviously.
Trump. Well, you're not allowed to even support the Palestinians, much less... 877-301-8970. Can I make one more comment before we start this thing? Part of the reason we're in this mess is because of the unwillingness of so many people to take on the outrageous behavior of some of Trump's minions. I read 2 statements put out by the president of Tufts University.
Terrible.
And a bunch of deans there. The president's name, I'm not going to read all the deans, is Suni Kumar. He goes out of his way to say, we support international students, etc. He goes out of his way to say we in no way cooperated. What he never does in at least, 800 words of comment is criticize the Trump administration and the ICE people for the kidnapping. Never.
He's caused the footage of the arrest disturbing.
That's the most dramatic statement he makes.
We stand with our Muslim students. Well, how is he standing with his Muslim students when one of them has been disappeared?
I agree.
And why are they taking people to Louisiana? Because it's a much more horrific detention center there.
And the
because
courts
of the
are
judges,
much less sympathetic.
because
right.
of the judges.
Let's not leave this. This is a guy who is president of the university, one of whose students who is perfectly legally there and is perfectly within her rights to make the comments that are attributed to her. And the best we can get is we stand by our international students and we didn't cooperate with the federal government, but a conscious decision, obviously, to not say what this is thuggery. It's kidnapping, as the Attorney General of our state said totally correctly. And honestly, it is disgraceful. It is total, whether it's Paul Weiss, whether it's Columbia University, whether it's this president and the deans who co-signed this letter. I mean, really, man and woman up here and tell the truth.
And of course, the paradox or irony here, whatever you want to call it, is supposedly in the name of fighting anti-Semitism, they are causing anti-Semitism. Because as I said before...
They mean the Trump administration.
Yes,
I agree
because
with
millions of people who understand that Israel is surrounded by hostile states. They all remember there's real anti-Semitism. There's real anti-Semitism on these campuses. Obviously, we all know what happened in the time of the Holocaust. But there's another awful thing that's happened in Gaza to innocent women and children that have nothing to do with Hamas. What are we up to, 50,000 people?
50,000.
Dead now? It's 1 in 50? I made a mistake. I thought it was 1 in 100, and I was appalled. Now it's 1 in 50. So by saying you can't be sympathetic toward the Palestinians being slaughtered makes you an anti-Semite that has to be thrown out of the country? I mean, that's where we are now?
Well, also, I know this doesn't make people happy, but I repeat, you're allowed to be anti-Semitic. We hope you are not. You are allowed to be anti-Semitic.
That is true.
It is not a crime.
The Nazis
and it is
marched in Skokie.
And it's not a deportable event. 877-301-8970. So it's really close to home, as were those, we talked about what happened in Chelsea and other communities in the last week or so when Homan came to town. He's the border czar, the tough-talking, bullying border czar, who our mayor had the courage to confront, unlike some of these university presidents.
By the way, I want to mention this. We get a lot of texts about this every day. This Saturday, there's going to be that hands-off protest all around the country. And hands-off everything is, the people that are here, the agencies that are being shut down, the money that's being taken away. It's going to be on Boston Common. It's also going to be all across the country.
Right.
So there is an effort this weekend to get some people out to the streets.
877-301-8970. Let's start in West Roxbury with Julie. Hi, Julie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I think it's a very emotional day for Boston.
Yeah.
When that guy, and was it New York, that was taken, nobody saw the video, but the video yesterday is so tragic that I have patients who are Trump supporters, and they have been watching the news, they've been reading the papers and not agreeing with Trump, but this is crossing the line for them. They are so sad that the free speech is gone in America. That's not what they fought for. That's not what their husbands fought for. One of my patients, her husband was a lawyer, and the restrictions on the court and impeaching judges is really upsetting her. Going against lawyers, I just think this country is so sad right now for everybody.
Julie, we're really glad you called.
I'm glad you called, and I'm glad you're emotional watching that video, and people who haven't seen it should watch it. This woman is surrounded by people with masks on, and they handcuffed her and they take her away.
It's like
in
I'm sorry to
tinted
keep quoting
window
Campbell.
SUV.
It's like a kidnapping.
Well, it is like but this is what happens in other countries. People are
Julie, thank you.
disappeared. We are now disappearing people. We now know she's in Louisiana, but for 24 hours,
her lawyers
lawyer
didn't even know.
where she was. What do you call that?
Disappearing.
Disappearing.
877-301-8970 is the number. And by the way, if there's anybody in the hierarchy of Tufts University, faculty, administrators in particular, who quarrel with our characterization of the statement of the deans and the president and how weak it is, please feel free to tell us we're wrong.
The statement we got this morning, I repeat, just says things like, we stand with our Muslim students. We want to know. We are here to support you. Have you contacted a bunch of lawyers to try to rescue this young woman?
Well, that's also not enough. The action has to be condemned specifically. I assume this is yet another university president who is worried that Donald Trump is going to do something horrible to him, so you sacrifice your principles.
Did I say it was this weekend? It's April 5th. The protest is April 5th.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Curran in Somerville, welcome to the show. Thank you for calling. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm truly incensed. They demand we come here legally, and we do, and they say abide by the laws, and we do, and then folks are disappeared. And it's cruel, and it's for exercising the freedoms that they're granted. And meanwhile, we have members of Congress who are espousing these anti-Semitic views, and they're not held to the same standards. They have the gall to call folks out for an end to a genocide, and they're calling them terrorists. And just as a human, as a father, my heart goes out to this woman's poor mother on the phone with her as her daughter's taken away. Yeah. And I don't know what it's going to take, but this is truly a dark day in our society.
Well, Karen, you said it beautifully. And I'll tell you, I do know what's going to happen. And I said this after we spoke to one of the lawyers for Mahmoud Khalil the other day, Donald Lieberman. Trump is winning, even if it turns out that Rumeysa Ozturk is freed. And if Mahmoud Khalil is freed, the chilling effect has been achieved, that people are going to think twice before exercising constitutionally permissible speech, because you may be snatched, you may be disappeared, you may be kidnapped. So it's a harsh show. Karen, another excellent call. Thank you for making it.
And she's a doctoral student in child studies.
She's a Fulbright,
and
isn't she?
human development. What a subversive subject that is.
Exactly.
Child study. I mean, it's just crazy. 877-301-8970 is the number. How do you feel about these disappearings of students that are here with all the legal papers and no evidence that they've committed any crime whatsoever, no evidence either that they have been supporters of Hamas. They have been supporters of people in Palestine.
Please stop saying that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter.
It doesn't matter, because you're still entitled to speak your mind.
You are still entitled to speak your mind, but I think people think one thing about people who support Hamas and something else.
Okay, and let's assume you said she hadn't committed a crime, which she clearly is not. Mm-hmm. Let's assume she had committed a crime. Is the way they apprehended her the way you want to see somebody who has committed even if she had a nonviolent crime, arrested in this country?
We've all seen news shows of the murderer being arrested by the police, and the police are there in their uniforms. I mean, they might have, if it's a riot kind of situation, they might have masks on, but generally they have all their badges, they have their badge numbers, they got their faces up.
I told you, it's like the Patriot Front.
Yes.
It is like the Patriot Front, these cowards who march around, whether it's at Governor Healy's house in Arlington.
What they do in Hungary and what they do in China.
So hopefully this is going to cause some people to wake up. Jennifer in Leominster, hi.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Thank you.
I saw this clip this morning, and I watched it a few times because I really had to kind of take it in. I'm an anthropology and sociology student, and when I first watched this and I saw these ICE agents masking themselves up, what I really picked up on, and my first thought was that they're protecting themselves because they're going beyond the limits of their own abilities. They're going beyond the law.
Their own authority.
They're being encouraged to.
Yeah, yep.
Exactly. And they're being encouraged to by leadership, right? I can't help but feel like, when this administration started, once, the big anti-immigration and the mass deportation talk started, I couldn't help but feel like it was going to eventually evolve into what, people would consider undocumented immigrants into, legal migrants or legal, what's the word I'm thinking of? People who are here temporarily, maybe on student visas, on work visas.
Like this woman.
These individuals, these individuals who are here, but, they're not going to start parsing out who's not supposed to be here and who is actually legally here.
Jennifer, they have grabbed, we spoke to some immigration advocates yesterday. They have grabbed citizens who, quote, look like immigrants, undocumented people, whatever that means. I think we all know what it means. There are no limits here whatsoever. We've heard credible evidence that all the gang members that were snatched, according to an appellate court, illegally and sent to El Salvador were not all gang members, not to mention the fact that a court in this country decided yesterday that they were entitled to the due process that they were denied. And I know people don't like to hear that even those who are gang members are entitled to some constitutional protection, according to U.S. Appellate Court, but they are. Jennifer, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Just a couple of quick texts here. Barbara from Norwell. Oh, never mind. She was talking about the Boston Globe. It is on the front page of the Boston Globe, Barbara. But she says, the next person says, I'm beyond outraged and shocked. Call me naive. I never thought this type of behavior could happen in Boston. This woman was kidnapped, period. Benjamin and Brighton were officially at the secret police disappearing people stage of this. The First Amendment doesn't functionally exist right now.
A couple of things before we take a break. Mary from Concord asks a great question. Imagine if this had happened to an American student studying abroad. That is a wonderful and fine point. And Zoe, our colleague, called Harvard to confirm Harvard Yard is closed to the public today, and Harvard said to them, due to a security incident, and we don't know, but the theory, I guess, the thinking...
Texter said that.
Oh, really?
We
Is it because of the Tufts incident?
It was because of the Tufts incident. Yeah. We could not confirm that, as Zoe said, but that was what a texter said. They expected it to be open tomorrow, so we don't know if it's about Tufts or not.
And by the way, I invited people who thought this was okay, but the few texts we've gotten who said are so disgusting that we're just not going to read them. If somebody wants to make a semi-civil call to us to say that this is necessary as part of whatever it is you like about Trump's deportation plans, that's fine, but there are lines.
Remember when Trump talked about getting rid of the bad hombres? He was going to get rid of the bad hombres, the murderers and the rapists and stuff like that, and no one disagrees with that. And obviously...
If they don't look like him, they're all murderers. No, I'm serious. His attitude is if you're not from Sweden, you're a murderer and a rapist. I mean, that is what he thinks about immigrants.
But you never know, Jim. In this situation, the Swedes could be next. They could be next.
Okay.
877-301-8970. We're talking about this horrible, horrible story about a woman being taken, an instructor and a teacher, a PhD student from Turkey, being basically kidnapped by masked men, not all of whom were wearing uniforms that showed she could identify them as cops or members of ICE or whatever. What do you think of it? 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text.
I'm Jared Bowe, and today on The Culture Show, Jeff Kinney is the best-selling author of the blockbuster Diary of a Wimpy Kid children's book series. Now he and his wife Julie Kinney want to start a new chapter for their adopted hometown, Plainville, Massachusetts. They join us to talk about their ambitious plans to revitalize it. Tune in for that and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Boston Ballet, presenting Winter Experience. This program of dancing is full of grace, athleticism, and artistry. On stage now through March 30th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're streaming at youtube.com/DBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. And by the way, we just learned Ask the Mayor with Michelle Wu will be April 8th from 11 to 12. If you're just tuning in, we're getting a reaction to these masked ICE agents arresting Tufts student Rumesa Ozturk on her way to a fast-breaking meal after Ramadan. We want to know if your reaction to this, and we're particularly interested if there are people who like Donald Trump, and up to 65% of Americans say they support Donald Trump's overall mass deportation plan. You okay with this, with the revoking of visas, the detaining of people by masked men, apparent violation of court orders, sending this young woman to Louisiana when the court order said she had to stay in Massachusetts? And if you have any comments about the president of Tufts, whose comment, at least her two statements, according to Marjorie and me, was sorely lacking one critical ingredient, criticism of the ICE agents and the man they work for, give us a buzz. 877-301-8970.
Here's a good one. Where were the masked goons to haul away the Charlottesville Nazis who paraded around with tiki torches shouting, "Jews will not replace us," and whom the president said were part of a, very nice people group? There were some nice people, some not so nice people.
By the way, people who are, I don't know, I'll make up something. People who were found guilty of 34 felonies aren't treated like this. She was accused of nothing. Joanne in Uxbridge, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie, long-time listener, first-time caller.
Thank you very much.
I am a graduate of one of the graduate schools at Tufts, and I was on the faculty for many years.
Oh.
And I have a sister-in-law who is Turkish. And I have been checking every few hours for a statement from the president of the university for something that is stronger than what I heard yesterday and this morning. And I have to say, I am absolutely appalled at the lack of courage that has been demonstrated by the president of this university and its administration. I just simply cannot believe that this is where we are. And I'm worried that the example that was shown by Columbia is what is being replicated around the country at other universities.
I mean, there's no other explanation, is there, for this? It's such an obvious hole in his statements. It's pretty obvious.
I'm hoping to hear something today, perhaps in the after this program, but I'm not hopeful.
Well, Joanne, can I make a presumptuous suggestion? As of last night when I went to sleep, I think, am I right about this, Marjorie? I think 650 faculty at Harvard have written a letter to the interim president asking him to stand up and be counted. And maybe you and fellow Tufts grads and former faculty members and current faculty can urge the same on the Sunil Kumar, who is the current president of Tufts. Let him say what we all apparently would like to hear. Joanne, that was a great call. We're really glad you made it. Thanks.
Well, Brian McGrory had a good point the other day.
What was it?
That a lot of people who went to places like Harvard and Tufts and all these great universities did very well in their lives. Alumni could go a long way toward filling the shortfall at some of these universities till this nightmare is over, and I think it will be over. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Teresa in Lexington, welcome.
Hi, thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
I want to let you know that I went to the protest yesterday that was in Somerville. And I took two friends with me, and there were quite a few people out there, but not enough. And I just want to implore people to get out and protest. It's not one and done. It's not one protest and you're done. We have to get out there repeatedly. Secondly, I want to talk to you about the protest today in Harvard Square at 4 p.m.
Oh, please.
Mohammed Khalil is having a hearing today, as far as I know, and there is a protest in Harvard Square at 4 p.m. The third thing I want to say is, Marjorie, the hands-off protest is actually April 5th, not this weekend.
Yeah.
So,
no, I've repeated it.
No, we made it. I
corrected it. That's okay. No, I goofed. It is Saturday, April 5th. You're absolutely right.
Teresa, why do you decide to go? I mean, for those of us who haven't been to one of those demonstrations, why did you decide to go and take a couple of your friends yesterday?
Because I'm horrified. I'm horrified, and I know that this is the last stand. If we don't get out there, we can see that our leaders, we do not have a strong leadership to take us through this. We have to take control of our own power right now. If we don't get feet on the ground, we're going to lose.
Teresa, thanks for what you did, and thanks for the call.
By the way, Teresa, as long as you're still there, it's indivisible.org, I believe, that's organizing the April 5th protest.
Yes.
And it's all around the country. We're going to do it in Boston Common here, but it's all around the country, correct?
Absolutely. I hope that I'm trying to get to D.C. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to, but I hope there's a very, very big presence in D.C. A lot of people are going down, but it is all over the country, yes, and in Boston.
Thank you, Teresa. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's called the Hands Off Rally.
877-301-8970.
You know, and she makes a good point about the one and done thing. I was talking to a young person the other day who was frustrated because they participated in the Women's March. And what are you laughing at?
We had this discussion the other day.
Did I mention this on the radio?
No, it's fine to say it again. I'm not laughing at you. And I know what these young people said. Oh, we were part of a march with 800,000 people.
And nothing happened.
Well, you know what happens?
Teresa made a good point, though. You have to keep going.
Exactly. Because you know what happens? The people you're protesting against, they cross their fingers and say, we can get through today. We duck our heads down. And as long as there's not a tomorrow, we're perfectly fine. And the Teresas of the world know there have to be tomorrows.
We were all excited. You go in the rest stops on the way down to Washington, D.C., everybody's in the rest stops on the highway, or they're on the train. We were on the train, the self-molten train.
Congratulating each other.
With their pink pussy hats on.
I remember
we were
well.
all giving each other high fives. And
Did you wear a pink pussy hat?
I did not, because I was there as a reporter.
Yeah,
I was trying to be, my a not involved kind of thing. But it was a big moment. And then, as we know what happened,
well, the first term was bad.
Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, but the first term, that's a good point. It was nothing like the first 60 days.
The Dobbs decision was a little discouraging after he showed up.
You think so? Yeah, it's a good point.
I do.
Aaron and Newton, welcome to the show. Hi, Aaron.
Good morning. I want to look at this a little more broadly. I don't believe for a moment that Trump and his people care about anti-Semitism or even about gang violence.
I don't either.
What they want to do is go after low-hanging fruit. Pick up people that they think other people won't worry about and get us desensitized so that when they want to go after other people who we otherwise might have cared about, we won't consider it so seriously. The other point that I want to make is that if they really cared about Israel and anti-Semitism, the most important thing is that America be strong, that it be unified, and that it be able to create alliances with other countries to protect Israel. Every move by Trump is against that project, and therefore everything that he says is really hypocritical vis-a-vis his weakening of the possibility of defending Israel.
Marjorie, you said a similar thing before the show started. Aaron, thank you for your thoughts, your call. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point, and I do think that this supposed crusade against anti-Semitism is doing just the opposite. Well,
that was Aaron's point. And he also, what Aaron said at the beginning, Trump doesn't really care about these things.
Somebody just said, where was he? He talked about nice people down there marching around with tiki torches.
Jews
saying,
shall not replace us.
That's right. There were some nice people there. There were some not very nice people
So
there.
an anonymous texter says, remember the good old days when our biggest worry was whether Jim would steal your lunch from the office fridge?
I know.
Those were.
I know.
It is incredible.
And we also harkened back to the days when the presidential election would happen, your person would win or they wouldn't win, and
they disappear for a month,
you didn't think about the president. Now every day it's like an onslaught. Can you believe it?
Can I say one thing, though? And we're going to talk, I think we're going to mention this with Andrea Cabral at noon. We have criticized the opposition elected officials for dropping the ball on everything. The one thing, and this is like low-hanging fruit, but they've done it well, they've been relentless on this Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic on the bombing in Yemen thing. I mean, they have been relentless. They finally getting one thing right.
They went to the Drudge Report today, and they saw the pictures of the secretary, the guy that's running the Defense Department,
we would call him
Hegseth,
Secretary Hegseth,
guzzling out of that bottle.
Can I tell you, I thought it was an AI photo, and it not only is it not an AI photo, I then watched a video of him on New Year's Eve.
That's what I'm
drinking
talking about.
from a wine. Well, there's not a video on Drudge, just a photo. I thought the photo was AI created.
Oh, okay. Where did I see the video then?
I showed you the video. Somebody tweeted it.
Yeah.
In any case.
The Drudge Report has a picture of him with the bottle.
Well, and the lead story is about Seth Moulton from Massachusetts saying, which is he, just incompetent or drunk? And I think based on history, that's a fair question.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a tough time to be in the military with this guy running the show.
By the way, we will, as we're trying to do, we will give you updates on this Rumesa Ozturk situation. And I wasn't aware, but one of the callers said there's actually a hearing on the Mahmoud Khalil thing today.
Yeah.
Our colleagues will check and we'll bring you an update.
I corrected
on that
myself
too.
one more time. I had the wrong weekend. It's April 5th. Next Saturday is the big hands-off rally. Okay, coming up after a quick break, we're going to talk to Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. She's going to talk about Mayor Michelle Wu's appearance on The Daily Show and the Boston mayoral race. So far, it's Wu versus Josh Kraft. We'll talk about that, too. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Foreign travelers are thinking twice about visiting the U.S., like these folks from north of our border.
This year was going to be our third trip down there, and we were getting excited for it. We invited some friends of ours to come along with us. We're going to make a whole thing of it, go for about a week and a half, and all that changed after the election.
It's not just politics. They're worried for their safety. Next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And the Bach Center, presenting Riverdance 30, The New Generation, a special anniversary tour, playing April 8th through the 13th at the Bach Center Wang Theater. Tickets at bachcenter.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie. And we're back at we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I forgot that. We're back at the library tomorrow. Handel and Haydn Society will provide music. NPR's media guy, David Folkenflik, will talk about, among other things, Marjorie Taylor Greene's incredible hearing yesterday with the heads of BBS and NPR. Sue O'Connell. And was there something? No. Oh, on April 8th, we just learned this morning, the Mayor Wu, will join us back at the library. At 12. Joined now on Zoom by Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. I think she's assigned to the mayoral race. Let me tell you. She also hosts
I am assigned to the mayoral race.
You are?
One of a team. Yeah.
There you go.
I didn't know. I honestly didn't know that, but you're doing great. She also hosts the podcast Say More with Shirley Leung, new episodes every Thursday. And obviously she's a regular contributor to our show. Hi, Shirley.
Okay.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Wait, before you go ahead, so what is there? There's a political part of it. There is a team that's assigned to different angles in the race?
Well, you know, we've got a mayoral race Slack channel, and I'm on it. So
there you go.
I love that.
I must be official.
I guess you are.
Of course.
Okay.
We have City Hall reporters,
Nikki
Griswold and Emma Platoff. I'm also, I love to, I cover the intersection of business and politics, right? So that's, the mayoral race. And so in many ways, especially if Tom O'Brien, the developer, jumps in to the race. I mean, Josh Kraft comes from the world of philanthropy. A lot of the donors are members of the business community.
Of course, yeah.
And so, and I love to follow money in politics. So, we have a handful of members also from the business section also, tuned into the race.
I only fear that the media today cares more about this race than the public does, because it's not much of a public race. Your former editor on our show, Brian McGrory, a week or so ago, he says, I really think it's great that, having a mayoral race in Boston. And he paused and he said, I wish we had one. And I think he meant that Josh Kraft has been a little low profile. So, and I should say, because I've been critical,
yes, he's
Josh Kraft's campaign reached out.
Yep.
We don't have a date yet, but he'll be joining us, I hope, in the next week or so. We're looking forward to it.
So, if you think about it, the mayor herself has not officially relaunched her campaign.
Saturday, she's doing it, right?
Yeah, right. It's coming up, and so once she does that, I think you're going to start to more of the media will even start to pay attention, but voters probably won't pay attention until August, right before the primary in September.
Okay, so Michelle Wu was on The Daily Show, and the host was repeatedly asking how she became the mayor of Boston. We're going to play this clip because you wrote a story about it, but let's hear the clip first. Here it is.
So how did you become the mayor of Boston? Instead of answer, I don't know if you've been to Boston, but this is not the demographic for mayor of Boston. Like, you came to my show when I was there, and my DJ was there. My DJ is like a Chicago Korean American guy, and I was like, oh, that's the mayor of Boston. And he was like, what?
You might be surprised by Boston. Next time you come, we'll have to take you around a little more.
So what'd you say about this?
Well, first of all, I love Ronnie Chang, all right? He is
the host.
the one of the guest hosts of the Daily Show. He's a Malaysian-born comedian. He's terrific. He had Mayor Wu on because he wanted to, he wanted to highlight Asian American leaders in America, and also wanted to highlight Democrats that are standing up to the Trump administration. But it was a running joke that went a little too long. I counted, there's only a 15-minute segment, right? I counted at least 5 or 6 times where he basically was like, how does a city as racist as Boston elect someone like you, young Asian American women? Like, why? Why and how? And Mayor Wu handled it very deftly. She's like, listen, Boston's a very different city. We're majority minority. Of course, she has been a long-time city councilor before she was elected mayor in 2021. And she, has worked the votes throughout the city. And as I wrote, voters wanted someone in City Hall that looks like her. And so that's why she's there. But he obviously he respected her, admires her, but he really wanted to just make Boston out to be Irish bros, the city that you saw in The Departed in Hollywood movies, not the city that I know. I'm perfect, right? I mean, we does racism still exist here? Of course it does, but we're not the most racist city in America.
Well, I also think it was off to me, because I think when you think of racist Boston, you're thinking of African Americans, you're thinking of black citizenry in Boston, and there's obviously huge racism remains involving black Americans.
Well, still a pretty segregated city.
And we're a very segregated city. I think the racism toward Asian Americans is different. You know what I mean? Than that is toward black Americans, which is about crime. That's what it's about, I think.
I mean, it is different. So I was very offended as a Bostonian, and the mayor, I thought handled it quite well, but the whole interview felt off to me.
Yeah.
And you probably remember in 2017, Michael Che,
of course,
on Saturday Night Live, he does the Weekend Update. He did the same thing about Boston. He called Boston the most racist city he's ever been to. And again, the same thing started all over again. Then Mayor Marty Walsh reached out to him. Let's do a sit down. Let me show you the Boston. We've changed quite a bit. We're not the Boston of the busing era from the 1970s.
I wouldn't go into this, except now that you say that you're covering the campaign, there was an interesting Globe story about the Kraft family. And by the way, I have to say that I've almost had enough of Josh Kraft, son of Robert Kraft. I mean, he's 60 years old. If it turns out, if his father campaigns for him, if his father gives him whatever is legally permissible to give to him, and you mentioned what's permissible and what's not, isn't involved in the campaign, it's one thing. But he's a grown up. I mean,
he's 57. Yes,
right. Even the headline in the New York Times when he declared was son of Patriots owner. And I understand that one time, but, enough already. Having said that.
It's going to never stop.
I know it's never going to stop. I'm just saying I don't know how fair it is. Having said that, I read the story about the Kraft brothers. I didn't even know there were 2 other brothers. Obviously, everybody knows. I've never met him. Jonathan, who is the attached to the hip to his father at the football games, and some people think running the team. Obviously, there's Josh, who's a presence in the city and now is a candidate. I never heard of the other 2 guys. Is it David and Daniel? Is that what I think? Do you know them?
I've interviewed Dan Kraft before. He runs basically the box business, the cardboard box business. And I remember interviewing him. I think the Kraft enterprise is the largest, importer exporter out of the port of Boston.
Really?
And that's where Robert Kraft originally made his money to
Whoa! He made his money. His father-in-law, Myra Kraft's father had the business,
right? Business, right? Through his father-in-law business, which enabled him to buy the Patriots.
Exactly.
And so. So I knew Dan was, a businessman in his own right, running the cardboard box side. Jonathan's doing football. And then David, I'm not sure what David does, but I was actually shocked that my colleague Mark Arsenal got to talk to David Kraft. I don't think anybody knows much about him.
And he spoke well of his brother, but that was about the end of it, right?
Exactly. What I thought was really interesting about Mark's story, he talked about the brothers, and two of them are like their late mother, Myra Kraft,
including Josh, theoretically, is the argument. Yeah.
Right. Myra was known for her philanthropy, and Josh is taken after his mother. And then the other two are more like, or Jonathan in particular is more like, and Dan, they're more like Bob Kraft, the
business guys.
Yeah, and you think about it, when you see the Patriots on TV, I'm sure Josh has been there, but I've never seen him. It's always Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft in the owner's box.
Right.
And I'm sure he's been there, but those are the two you always see, right?
And Josh has said, listen, I don't have anything to do with my dad's business. He's always done philanthropy. The only thing he's done is related to the Patriots is run their foundation, but he doesn't do anything in terms of making money. What I thought was really interesting about Mark's story was that as successful as the Kraft family is, right, dominating this this cardboard box business, right? Dominant sports franchise, right? But the one thing they haven't figured out is getting into politics,
Yeah.
In fact, they're terrible at it. They've tried to build stadiums in Boston under Menino, and that failed. And they also tried to bring a soccer stadium to Boston. That hasn't worked out. So they're just really bad at dealing with the politics of cities. And so
they got a soccer stadium in Everett, though.
They did, but after 20 years.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. Yeah,
right. And so, but in particular, they've had a problem in the city of Boston. So it's almost like they're, this Josh wants to crack the code on figure out how to become the mayor of Boston right now.
Can I say one thing I disagree with you about in terms of the race, and this excites me if it happens, is ordinarily people don't pay attention till Labor Day. But I think two things. One, because Wu's profile is just exploding, so there's a lot more attention even in Boston in the race. And two, I'm going to violate my own principle right now because the Kraft family is so famous in this community. If Josh Kraft raises the profile of this very, very low-profile campaign, whether it's TV ads or being everywhere and doing every radio and television show in town, doing interviews with everybody, I think the engagement level could be a lot higher, a lot earlier here. And I agree with Brian McGrory. When the race really starts, it is having two smart, competent people running for mayor of the city is nothing but good for the mayoralty and the city.
And what's going to be fascinating is how Josh, handles his father's entanglements with Donald Trump.
Huge.
With John, because we just talked about Paul Weiss, the Kraft.
That's right.
He facilitated the meeting with the White House.
With the White House and
the father. We should be clear.
Yes,
the father.
Yes, and I believe the wife is on the board
of the Kennedy Center.
The Kennedy Center too.
That's right.
So, and supposedly Kraft had cut off contact with Trump after January 6th. Father.
Yeah, but again, Josh Kraft didn't set up the meeting with the White House.
No,
Josh Kraft's wife is not on the board of the Kennedy Center.
But the sins of the father are often placed at the feet of the son. It's just kind of the way things work. It's not fair, but I think that's kind of the way things work.
In any case, one of the things that's apparent that I think Kraft hopes is an issue in this race is the whole White Stadium thing. We're not going to get lost in the weeds because we know it's a Boston thing, doesn't apply to everybody. People know there is a lawsuit pending. I think we're going to have a decision almost any day. Every finding from the court so far has been bad for the Emerald Necklace Conservancy. Is that what it is? The last word that's bringing this lawsuit. You know what I found? And by the way, Kraft just said they should. This is a bad idea. In a recent poll, 55 to 42% support what Wu's doing. The most striking thing in one of the Globe stories I saw, which I did not know before, is the Emerald Necklace Conservancy meets with Mayor Wu in her office to try to resolve this thing. Yeah. They leave the office, they file the lawsuit without even notifying the person who was decent enough to have them in for a discussion. I mean, talk about bad form. It's incredible.
So I wrote the story about why is the Emerald Necklace Conservancy suing the city of Boston and Mayor Wu over White Stadium? So they're the stewards of, the Emerald Necklace parks, right? The Franklin Park, in this case, is one of the parks they like to adopt, and they felt that they need to defend, the rights of Franklin Park. There should not be a professional women's soccer stadium here. And usually these advocacy groups, they work very closely with the city, right? They don't go and it's really kind of shocked this group of similar advocacy groups, like there's another group, Friends of the Public Garden, right? Very similar profile as Emerald Necklace Conservancy. And they have also been at odds with the city, but they would never sue them. They would disagree, they would fight publicly, but they never would sue them. And so it's very shocking to kind of this world, the civic and nonprofit world, to see Emerald Necklace Conservancy sue. And I think what was really interesting was that it doesn't seem like there was an effort to try to resolve something with the city. Because I asked the city, when did you first realize that you might have a problem? You might be sued by the Conservancy. And they said January 2024, they get, the first set of comments letters start to come in about the White Stadium proposal. And they realize, wow, look at this letter. This letter was written by a lawyer. And so immediately they started the city started to bring in the Conservancy to talk it over, including this meeting with Mayor Wu in her office. And then I think within a couple weeks, the Conservancy sued. And the way the city found out was from my colleague Adrian Walker, who called the city for comment. Is that, hey, you're being sued by the Conservancy over your White Stadium proposal, and they had no idea.
And by the way, as I say, the legal arguments have been really narrowed by the court. And I should have said, I always assume people know what we're talking about. This is the stadium proposal, roughly $100 million from the city, maybe more, $100 million from the women's soccer thing, and
Boston Legacy. It's got a new name, Boston Legacy.
Right, they just have a new name as of yesterday, and obviously everybody that's been there, I have not. I've only seen it from the outside, and it's already being disassembled or raised or whatever. Said it's a total dump and a disservice to the kids in the city, the athletes. That's going to be huge and wonderful. And there's a dispute about private land and that sort of thing. But as a political issue, at least so far, it seems the majority of people in the city are with Mayor Wu. We're not taking calls. We're talking to Shirley Leung.
Yeah. So it was great to watch this whole event, this auction of this downtown building. Everybody standing outside with their phones on the street. Yeah. So the one Lincoln, that was the address of this big high rise in the financial district. The prior owner had a mortgage worth $763 million 3 years ago, and then it sold for $400 million.
And what was extraordinary about this, so everybody's been watching, when will some of these big commercial property value buildings, when will they go to auction? And this was kind of one of the first really high-profile buildings. State Street used to be in this building. They moved down the street to a new building, and so this one is pretty empty. And so that's probably why they can't pay the mortgage. It's a pretty empty building. And I was telling my colleague Kathleen Carr, like, man, had I known it would be a scene. Like people line out, but it seems like a couple dozen people line out outside the building. There's an auctioneer, right? Like it sounds like it talks really fast, right? And what was surprising was that it was over in seconds. It was like 82 seconds.
82 seconds, yeah.
And there was only one bidder, $400 million, and that was it. Do you guys ever watch Storage Wars on reality TV?
What is it?
So this reminded me of Storage Wars, which is, basically there are storage units that are abandoned, and so they get auctioned off. And so you have an auctioneer, and they open up the storage unit, and you have a couple dozen people.
That's great.
Bidding for the units and hoping that they'll find gold Rolex watches in there and get back all the get back their investment. And so this is really the beginning of, I think, of we're going to see more auctions like this in Boston.
So what's the message of the dramatic drop in valuation of this property?
Well, I was surprised that there weren't more bidders.
Yeah.
That I thought that people would be. I mean, think about it, they got it for half price.
Yeah.
And you think that people would be fighting for this building, and this has huge implications for the city budget because they collect property taxes
based on valuation.
Based on valuations, and so now you've got a potentially. Wow. A building that's worth half the price, half its value.
So what are you saying? I should know the answer to this.
You're the tax man,
Well, I
Jim.
was going to say I'm going to be humiliated when I ask this question. So a building that isn't sold, let's say that's valued currently at $500 million, can it go to whatever the entity that we can ask Mayor Wu this next week that does property valuation for the city and say, I want my valuation dropped based upon the sale of the sale price of this one Lincoln, whatever it is?
Well, no, I'm sure there are already dozens, many property owners who have already filed tax abatements.
Yeah.
Now whether or not the city will grant them, I think you've actually talked to Mayor Wu about this before.
We have?
They have about tax abatements or about.
Whoops.
Well, maybe
it's good
it's
one
not
of us was listening.
Yeah, maybe it was your day off, Jim.
Well, it could have been your day off. But
Thank you. I don't
maybe
think
it's not
so.
tax. But the idea is that I think what she explained was. When times are good, we don't go after you and ask you for more taxes.
Oh, I got it.
If times are bad, why should we cut you a break? It kind of all evens out was her point.
Hey.
Why should we give you an abatement now?
I'm sorry to be rude, but we want to know. We only have 30 seconds. We want to know what's on the podcast.
Oh, yes, it's great. We've got this guy named Stephen Marsh, who's a Canadian journalist.
Mm-hmm.
He was. We were talking about U.S.-Canada relations. He also has an op-ed in the Globe. He was really worked up. Guess what? The Canadians are really mad at us. They're mad at the Trump tariffs. I mean, they are armed. I mean, they seem like really nice, docile people. Oh, no, they are mad as hell. They actually want to get nuclear weapons. I mean, seriously.
Not to use on us. We should be clear.
And we think of it as kind of like, yeah, whatever, it's a joke. No, they're so mad. I mean, Stephen Marsh himself, he actually was supposed to go to Cape Cod this summer
and he's not gone?
Birthday party. He canceled. And so he called his friend.
10
his
seconds.
Friend worked for the New York Times. And his friend and she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, every dollar I give you to the Americans is a dollar out of my pocket. No.
Okay, we gotta
Sounds
go.
like Shirley's mad too.
Shirley, thank you
see you
so
later.
much.
Take care.
Be careful of the Canadians. That's all I'm telling you. Be careful.
She's at Boston Globe Business Comms. You got to listen to
See you,
that
Shirley.
podcast. Say More is the podcast.
Yeah. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Eakin on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com. Following a man's traumatic brain injury, his son chronicles his journey to recover lost memories and his family's struggle with accepting a new version of their father. Watch The House We Lived In tonight at 9 on GBH2.
Your Public Safety Secretary, Andrea Cabral, discusses Karen Reed's defense team, adding a former alternative juror from the first trial.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Some U.S. troops see a double standard regarding the Trump administration's encrypted Signal app fiasco. Senior level officials maintain they did nothing wrong by sharing details of a military operation in a non-secured group chat. Information about an airstrike targeting Houthi rebels in Yemen earlier this month was shared on the encrypted Signal app. NPR's Quill Lawrence reports on the fallout.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said he did nothing wrong by sharing the details of an attack on Yemen on a group chat that included a journalist. The text thread was happening hours before the bombs landed. Pentagon policy specifically prohibits sharing anything but public information on messaging apps like Signal. And rank-and-file service members are trained on operational security and can be court-martialed for even minor breaches. Kevin Carroll is a lawyer.
Next week.
The tariff, which is 10 times the current import levy, is intended to boost domestic auto production. It's also expected to make it more expensive to buy a new vehicle, and other countries are likely to retaliate with higher tariffs of their own on U.S. exports. In an overnight social media post, Trump warned Europe and Canada could face even higher tariffs if they try to retaliate. Revised figures from the Commerce Department show the U.S. economy grew slightly faster at the end of last year than initially reported. GDP expanded at an annual rate of 2.4% in October, November, and December. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
An emergency housing voucher program started during the pandemic is winding down years ahead of schedule. Here's NPR's Jennifer Ludden.
In 2021, pandemic aid funded an extra 70,000 housing vouchers specifically for people who were homeless or on the verge of it. The program was supposed to last until 2030, but the Department of Housing and Urban Development now says local agencies must stop issuing new emergency vouchers in 2 weeks, and there will be no further funding. It estimates money for existing vouchers could last through next year. In a notice, HUD cites historic rent hikes, which have meant each voucher costs more than expected. The program will wind down as homelessness is at a record high, and HUD is cutting other housing programs and staff. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Washington.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. More than 600 Harvard faculty have signed a letter to Harvard's governing boards calling on the university to publicly condemn attacks on universities and defy orders that interfere with its independence. The Crimson reports that the letter was circulated Monday morning and quickly garnered hundreds of signatures by yesterday, Wednesday. The letter has the support from professors across all 9 of Harvard's faculty divisions. One line in that letter reads, quote, "Ongoing attacks on American universities threaten bedrock principles of a democratic society, including rights of free expression, association, and inquiry," unquote. 5,000 tons of food waste from Bourne, Falmouth, Mashpee, and Sandwich could become composted annually at a facility being processed for Joint Base Cape Cod. The project aims to address the cost of challenge of transporting food waste off Cape. Base Director General Christopher Foe told Barnstable County Commissioners at their weekly meeting a composting facility of that size must fit with how the base is currently used.
The two things we worry about is aviation and birds. The covered concepts work with us. And two is just, do we put a composting facility and then next thing you know, our military housing is literally right next to it.
The facility may operate as a public-private partnership. Cost estimates range from $3 to $4 million. Opening day for the Red Sox. They are in Texas. The home opener April 4th against the Cardinals. 43 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, where drivers can compare direct rates using Progressive's rate comparison tool. Customers can see options and rates side by side. More at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Yeakin. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We'll be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with members of the Handel and Haydn Society, plus NPR's David Folkenflik. He's going to talk to us. He's the media critic for NPR. He's going to talk about Wednesday's hearings before Congress involving funding for NPR and PBS. And April 8th, 11 to noon at the BPL. Ask the Mayor with Mayor Michelle Wu. Hello again, Jim.
A couple of programming things. At the bottom of the hour, by the way, we're going to talk to the former head of USAID, Andrew Natsios, from Massachusetts. He was head of USAID under George W. Bush. We've talked a lot about it, but he was actually there. And at 12:55, you're talking about Folkenflik talking about the hearing. I'm going to talk a little bit about what happened after the hearing with Marjorie Taylor Greene and a particular reporter, which is really a fine example of the best of democracy. We're joined now on Zoom by former Suffolk County Sheriff, former Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, and a BPR contributor. Hello there, Andrea Cabral.
Hello there, Jim. Hello there, Marjorie.
Hey.
Hello, Andrea Cabral. So let's start with something I think is very unusual. You can tell us. People are aware of the Karen Reed trial. She was accused of running over her boyfriend, a former Boston police officer, John O'Keefe, and leaving him in the snow to die. Well, a lawyer who served as an alternate juror, those are the ones that have to sit there the whole time and don't get to vote, on the previous case, has now joined Karen Reed's defense team.
Never heard of this.
Yeah, what do you make of this from a prosecutor over there?
Never heard of it either. Never, ever heard of it. It's clearly not prohibited, right? I served on a jury once, a civil jury myself, when I was at the AG's office.
Oh,
of course,
while you were at the AG's office?
While I was at the AG's office.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a civil case. It was a malpractice case, and I got seated because nearly every other prospective juror. It was a breast cancer case. Nearly every other prospective juror had some experience with cancer in their family that rendered them unable to be objective. Mm-hmm. So that was really why I got seated. But I didn't offer my services to either side. Well, as I say, it's not certainly not illegal. It just feels odd, and not necessarily in a positive way. Yeah. But people who are under criminal are being tried in a criminal case have the right, a nearly unfettered right, to choose their counsel.
Unless Donald Trump doesn't like their lawyer, and then they don't get to keep it. We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Can I stay on this for a second? I think it's an effort to affect potential jurors, because if this woman was going to be added to the legal team, why wouldn't she have been added to the legal team earlier? I think they wanted a headline just days before the trial starts. Hey, you out there who may be on the jury, somebody who was on the prior jury thought enough of our defense that she's joining us as part of the team. Doesn't that make a statement?
About the guilt or innocence.
Yeah, exactly. At least that's what they intended to, I think intended to be, which, by the way, they're entitled to do. I'm not doing anything unethical or illegal, but I think that's what's going on here.
Oh, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think they are trying to send that message, but you always have to be very careful that doesn't cut both ways, that she is not perceived by potential jurors as being an opportunistic lawyer who saw the opportunity to latch on to a high-profile case to further her own ambition, and is somehow, by offering to be part of the defense team, betraying the solemnity of the proceedings that she participated in previously, and perhaps selling out her fellow jurors. So you do have to worry about it cutting both ways in the minds of potential jurors, whether or not they think that this is an appropriate thing for her to do.
Can I just give a couple of quick updates that we just got from our colleagues? We promised our listeners earlier. The case of the woman from Tufts who ended up in Louisiana, even though a judge ordered her, who was kidnapped essentially on the streets of Somerville, where the judge ordered her kept in Massachusetts. Not surprisingly, the lawyers for the feds said she was already in Louisiana before the court order, which is what they said around the Venezuelan thing too. And in terms of Mahmoud Khalil, the judge says he wants final arguments from both sides on Thursday, and he expects to render his decision very shortly. Oh, today is Thursday. Very shortly thereafter.
He was supposed to, it was today the 26th?
Today's the 26th.
Yeah, he was supposed to do it yesterday.
27th.
The deadline was supposed
Today's
to be,
27th.
okay, the deadline was supposed to be 2 days ago. So,
in any case.
And his wife is about to give birth.
What's that?
You're talking about Judge Boasberg?
Yes.
Yeah, it's at 2 o'clock. There's a hearing.
Oh, it is.
He's called a hearing at 2 o'clock on the signal. He also.
I know.
So, most people know that judges are sort of chosen. There's sort of this random, not a random lottery, but they come up in a regular rotation. He is also the judge on the Signal Gate case, which was brought by a watchdog group against the individual members of the chat, including Marco Rubio, both in his capacity as Secretary of State and as the head of the National Archives, because it's his job to preserve all of this information. He's called a hearing for that at 2:00, but he was upheld on the deportation case by the D.C. Court of Appeals. And he wants that information about when those planes left and landed. If they're going to continue to try to cover this up, they're going to have to make massive efforts to doctor all of these logs to show that all of these deportees had already left. And it doesn't matter. If he orders them to stay in the jurisdiction, then even if you've taken them someplace else, you have to bring them back.
Yeah.
Well, there seems to be a lot of defying of judges' orders going on here, which is very, very distressing. But I just want to mention one thing. You know, we talked a lot about colleges, and we're going to talk in a second about law firms just folding out of fear of what Donald Trump could do to them. This judge now, he's in the middle of this immigration case to the Venezuelan alleged gang members,
Salvador, yeah.
and going to this horrible place in El Salvador. And now he's in the middle of this Signal case. I mean, he must be subjected to horrible, and I'm sure his family and everybody else, death threats and all this kind of stuff. So is this guy going to get some kind of protection so he can have a strong spine? What's the deal, Andrea?
I don't know whether or not he has requested it. I think that sort of is a matter. I'm sure that as these kinds of threats come in, the judges report them to the proper authorities. So I would think that certainly if it's something that he wants, and perhaps whether he wants it or not, there would be apparatus in place to make sure that he and his family are protected at a minimum.
Yeah, because if they don't stand tall, I mean, we're in big trouble.
Well, I mean, it makes the point that we were talking about last week about the danger of a law firm like Paul Weiss sort of capitulating to some degree. I don't know that they capitulated altogether, but capitulated in any form to Trump administration efforts, and the fact that other law firms are taking that chilling effect that we talk about is having the desired effect, and that nonprofits and others who have been pretty stalwart, groups that have been and individuals have been pretty stalwart in resisting the Trump administration, holding them to account, bringing lawsuits, they're having trouble among certain law firms, top law firms, finding representation. These firms are sort of backing out because they don't want to draw the ire.
Yeah.
Now, that makes for a great opportunity for less established but no less qualified law firms to step into this breach and represent these organizations and these individuals. But shame on the ones that are backing away. It is nothing but cowardice. And they're also facing internal pressure based on their cowardice, where at least it's been reported that at least one law firm, a partner, is thinking about leaving because the leadership wouldn't stand up.
Well, by the way, Nancy Gertner talked about someone who works with her, I think from Skadden Arps, one of the firms, who actually resigned from the firm because of this. The headline is so chilling in the Washington Post. Law firms refuse to represent Trump opponents in the wake of his attacks. And I want to take issue with one thing you said. You said if the big law firms are going to, because of the Paul Weiss deal, get scared and not be willing to represent somebody, well, that gives an opportunity for the talented smaller firms. If you're a multi-zillion-dollar firm and you can't afford, you say, to stand up to Trump, how can a small firm? I'm not saying there aren't individual lawyers who are not going to do it, but everybody's at risk. And the point I've made repeatedly, I made this in the first half hour, by putting Ozturk and Khalil in jail, even if they're released, Trump has won because he's chilled speech. Same thing here. They've chilled these lawyers, and they should resign from the bar.
No, don't get me wrong. I don't think that they're pulling away from this because they think they can't afford to go against Trump. When Trump does things like this, like Trump is essentially treating the federal government and its buildings and property like they're his own private property.
Right.
So, right. They're not doing it because they think they can't afford to take this to court and preserve their right to enter federal buildings to represent their clients. They're doing it because it's about access. It's about continued access. They could afford to defend themselves.
What do you mean? What do you mean continued access?
They could afford to defend themselves in terms of what it would cost them to go up against the DOJ, which I suggest has no authority to keep them out of federal buildings.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely don't. I mean, revoking people's security clearances based on nothing other than the fact that they have lawyers that represented people who were your opponents is absolutely an insane basis. So they'd win. I think this is about access and continued access. It's the same thing that the press has been doing for even longer, not going against Trump as hard and as well as they could, because it limits their access, where journalists wait until they can publish a book about everything that they've known versus reporting on it in real time, which would have given them less continued access. That's a problem. That's why I think these firms are doing it. Not because they don't have the resources. Like you said, they're multi-billion dollar.
Well, but the guy from Paul Weiss who went to the White House, the guy who went to the White House, his defense after being attacked verbally by so many lawyers and law firms around the country is this would have ruined us. So I think they're both things.
Access to what? I don't follow you.
Access to everything they have. Like ordinarily, right, before Trump, these law firms could represent people on either side of a conflict, whether they were Democrats, Republicans, whatever it was. You just hired a lawyer, right? When that access is cut off, when they're not coming to your firm, if you go to a firm's webpage, they will list all of the high-profile clients they have.
Yep. Okay.
Because that enhances their bottom line.
Yeah.
Not that they can't afford in terms of the time it would take their lawyers to defend them in court and the hours, the billable hours they would have to use defending themselves. They can afford that, but they can't afford to lose the access that enhances their reputation and continues to bring them business. That may be what Weiss meant, really, when he said this would ruin us.
Well, they're talking about barring companies that have federal contracts from hiring these law firms, too.
But they could defend themselves and win that.
But the bottom line...
Well, ABC could have defended itself and won the defamation case because they're all cowards.
I think it's money. I think the bottom line is the root of all evil. It's all about money.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is money.
In any case, we all agree it's atrocious, regardless of what the motivation for the cowardly
And where does it
behavior
lead
is.
to? It leads to the rights of all these different people being trampled. I mean, it
means that the legal profession is helping autocratic, authoritarian, fascist behavior become more entrenched.
Wait a second. Let me ask you something very quickly because I want to move on here. Aren't you violating some obligation one has as a lawyer if your firm, I assume they're saying it more carefully, we're not representing anybody who worked for Biden. We're not representing anybody which is from an organization that is on the other side of an issue from Trump. If there's that if you can prove that kind of blanket refusal, is there a problem there, or are lawyers entitled, I should know this, to just say, I'm not representing it, especially if I've represented them in the past? Can they get away with that?
They might be able to the short answer is they might, and it might even be likely. I would think that you would have to prove that the blanket discrimination falls against a protected group. I don't know that as of yet, Trump opponents are considered protected, although they should be designated a protected group the way that he goes after them. I mean, by and large, law firms have the right to refuse to represent whoever they want to refuse to represent. It is only once you filed an appearance that there is a higher standard if you try to withdraw.
Okay. So everybody in the United States of America is entitled to legal representation, but you could
not by you or you.
You could get some really sad sack, wind up with some really sad
or
sack
nobody.
lawyer, or nobody.
Or nobody.
Well, if you're entitled to legal representation, you're entitled to somebody.
No, you're only entitled to legal representation if you can't afford it or can't find it. If you're a criminal defendant.
Not a civil case.
Short of that, you're not entitled to have a lawyer represent you. You're not entitled. If nobody's willing to represent you, you can't file an action saying they're all screwing me.
So it only works in criminal cases, not civil cases, is what you're saying.
Yes, you're only entitled to an attorney in a criminal case. In a civil case, you're not entitled to representation at all.
Okay, so we're
So they'll
talking.
just have to go into court and represent themselves, I guess.
Yeah, that's really good. And what's the old line from the Supreme Court justice?
Anyone who represents
Those who represent
himself
as a fool for a client.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the old line.
Yeah. And
Talking
by the
to
way,
Andrea Cabral.
speaking of lines, this is the stuff that this judge, District Judge Beryl Howell, said when she heard about this. Quote, "It sends little chills down my spine," talking about when she granted this Perkins Coie a temporary restraining order early this month along these same lines of.
They stood up to Trump.
Perkins Coie has stood up, and another major law firm, Williams and Conley, they're supposed to be very good, has agreed to take Perkins Coie's case. So
client.
there are two law firms that we know that are big deal law firms that are standing up: Williams and Conley and Perkins Coie, and we hope that there are more. Okay, we're moving on. Where are we going?
So I'm interested in your perspective after the fact. Now that 23 of the 28 names of the alleged Johns, including a Cambridge City councilor, are public. The SJC determined for a variety of reasons that these show cause hearings before this, what I call secret court, this magistrate system, which no other state in the country, the public interest was such, and a variety of other things, that they should be public. After the fact, now that we know the names of 23 of the 28 people, did the SJC make the right decision, or did they deny basic rights for these 23 men?
No, I think it was the right decision. I mean, this country has a inglorious history. It's not just Massachusetts, it's, just the general history of not disclosing the names of the men who keep this industry afloat, along with a simultaneous refusal to legalize sex work, which just means that the only people that are ever, shamed and prosecuted for it are the women. And especially when you're talking about, here there are allegations of trafficking. As well. If there were no market for it, it wouldn't be happening. If there is going to be a market for it, it ought to be legal, and there ought to be protections for the people who engage in it. That's not happening here. So to continue to refuse to give the same limelight or spotlight to the men who make this entire industry possible as the women who get arrested and prosecuted and jailed, and some ultimately deported for it, is just inherently unfair.
Do you think
I'm glad that they did it.
Do you think we should legalize prostitution?
Yes, of course.
You do? Okay.
Of course.
Why do you say of course?
Well, it is clearly an industry for which there is both a market and a demand, but it remains among the least protected for the people who provide the supply. It may be one of the few industries that has as long a history as it does, where the people who provide the supply are routinely prosecuted and jailed with absolutely no protection.
Can I get back to the underlying? I think I'm a sort of a organization of one plus the Boston Globe. Can you explain to me if this is the only state in the country that has these magistrate courts, these secret courts that are not secret this time only because the state's highest court said the hearings should be public and the names of the people before them should be public? The magistrates do not even need to be lawyers. We have a history based on brilliant Globe reporting, 7 or 8 years ago, about how people in positions of power, including some judge, remember, who stole a Rolex off a conveyor belt at Logan, there's no probable cause, according to this magistrate. This is one of my dumbest questions. Why doesn't the legislature just abolish this and bring us into the same world that 49 other states and D.C. do with their state courts?
Yeah, that's a rhetorical question. I don't know. We have certain things in the state that are, vestiges of old, that are good and that should remain.
Like what? Like what? Give me one.
Massachusetts.
What's one?
Well, sheriffs, for one.
Okay.
That's right. Andrea Cabral, first woman sheriff.
I say that, as a former sheriff, I know. But I think it's because of the way that we have houses of correction, which are unique. and are run by sheriffs. And that uniqueness has allowed us to be on the forefront of reentry because we have this middle of the road place where people go called houses of correction that are run by county sheriffs. I think that's important to look. I mean, that doesn't mean that you keep all of the vestiges. And I think they deserve to be looked at. I mean, sheriffs are routinely, there's a commission right now that I'm on. Sheriff's operations are routinely looked at to make sure that they still are functioning in a way that moves the state forward. That magistrates don't get looked at for things like that, and they probably should.
And just correct me if I'm wrong, Andrea, but as the former sheriff, my understanding, House of Correction, like your old one in Suffolk County, those are pretrial detainees and people who have been convicted of minor crimes. There's, the big time criminals, the murderers and stuff, they're going to a maximum security. So it's a lesser quality of criminal there.
Right. It's intermediate. It's intermediate.
That's the wrong word.
I mean, they're not lesser crimes because there are a series of fairly serious concurrent jurisdiction felonies that just carry a House of Correction sentence, along with the possibility, I mean, a judge could sentence a person to 5 years in state prison or 2.5 years in the House of Correction.
And there's women there.
Depending on their record and how well a judge thinks they will do, they could go to a House of Correction, which keeps them in that county with readily available reentry services, and that's actually good for the Commonwealth.
Because I always thought it was terrible that women had to go back up to Framingham if they're, that you can't be closer to where your family is and all that,
So when people like the governor or the mayor come on our show next time and say things like, we had the first library, the first this, the first that, Marjorie or I will make sure we insert, and we've got sheriffs.
That's right.
That's what we're going to be saying.
I like to say
Thank
sheriff.
You very much.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate that.
I like to say I know Sheriff Cabral.
Yeah.
I know Sheriff Cabral.
Yeah, but do you really know Sheriff Cabral?
Well, who knows?
Sheriff Cabral, Secretary Cabral, it's great to see you. We'll see you soon. Take care of yourself.
Good to see you too.
Be well.
Thank you, Andrea.
Bye.
We've been speaking with former Suffolk County Sheriff, first woman sheriff in Massachusetts, former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety, Andrea Cabral, who joins us every week. Okay, after a quick break, former Massachusetts GOP chair and former administrator of USAID under George W. Bush, Andrew Natsios, joins us. He's going to tell us why USAID matters and what happened to the GOP. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Hi, I'm Gal Zipelman-Lotan, bringing you GBH Daily, a newsletter full of everything you need to know to start your day. We have trusted local reporting from our GBH newsroom, alongside national and global stories from creators at Frontline, Nova, and more. You can subscribe at gbh.org/daily to get GBH Daily and the news that matters to you in your inbox each weekday. That's gbh.org/daily.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Central Square Theater, presenting Her Portmanteau, an explosive fourth play in Boston's You Fought cycle, co-produced with Front Porch Arts Collective, now through April 20th. centralsquaretheater.org.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow with members of the Handel and Haydn Society and NPR's David Folkenflik.
I'm looking forward to that.
I know, for our media analysis segment. And he's going to focus in on yesterday's DOJ subcommittee hearing on PBS and NPR. They were up before.
Yeah, so there was this sort of response that burbled up after the election when there was this narrative thread that Trump's appearance on Rogan and in other pockets of the quote-unquote manosphere discern, but I think culturally we can sort of determine like that there was some sort of formation there with the relationship between Trump and Young, cultural thread that can't really be sort of synthetically manufactured from a political perspective. So you can't like design a sort of liberal or neoliberal Joe Rogan in the lab and put him out in the market. Like that's just kind of not how sort of media cultures work in some senses. And what I felt that,
talked about on that show, how he didn't realize that Fox News was this huge attraction, that their ratings are massive. He kind of seemed
They're
surprised.
not Edward R. Murrow, Marjorie.
But that is a problem. That's a problem.
Yeah, so the thing is it's exactly right. It's sort of they are entertainers, fundamentally that's fact-based and truth-based. Like these personalities step in as the replacement, and this is kind of the world that we live in the wake of that.
Can I just say one more thing? I want to get to the podcast, but the one thing I've been saying, I don't know if you're old enough to remember Air America, which was the attempt on the radio by the left to respond.
By Mark Maron?
Right. Oh, exactly. So to respond to Rush Limbaugh, et cetera. And we said that we were on the air at the time, that what the left does not get.
Schooled him while he's 13. He's like, no. This morning, wakes up at 6 something. He's like, I'm coming. I'm like, he literally would not leave the house.
Did you let him take off school?
No, he did. Of course not. He's not here for a good reason. But the point is, you are making a damn dent.
Thank you. I'm kidding.
By the way, if you look up pandering in any dictionary,
he's going to eventually formally announce. Newsom is, I'll give him credit. Like he's trying to build out some sort of media strategy that is somewhat new. Right. This is not the only podcast he's making. He has a show with Marshawn Lynch and the former agent Doug Henderson called Politicking. And to some extent, it's like, okay, this is kind of broadly where you would want a sort of modern politician to be constantly getting into new media spaces, to be meeting new people. But here he's really trying to stake out a political sort of situation where it's like, I will try to make myself seem more moderate or sort of ward off the kind of like extreme interpretation that, right-wing audiences might have. But by doing so, it seems like he is putting himself in a position to compromise on very key stances. And this, I think the larger lesson here is the sort of what is the art of the hangout? What is the art of this particular way of embodying the media position? It is not necessarily to be in the presence of a person who's diametrically, ideologically opposite and then compromising. It is to know how you stand your ground. And in that particular clip, this is not like a man who stands his ground.
No, it doesn't. Okay.
He probably doesn't even have a son, by the way, but go ahead.
So here's some sound of the brother of former First Lady Michelle Obama. Jim wanted her to run for president. His name is Craig Robinson. And he's talking with Michelle in this very lifestyle-y kind of podcast about her influence on his growing up in their new video podcast, IMO.
Teaching me how to dance.
Oh, yes. You needed help.
Before I would go to the prom.
Because he was on the court and he hadn't learned like some basic moves. So it's like, dude, your first dance, you've got to. So we put on the record player and I gave you a couple moves that you are still doing to this day.
I still do these moves to
That's all you got. It's good though. It's you staying in the pocket.
Stay in there.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh boy. So the show's called IMO, and in many senses, when it came out, it felt like, oh, this is a victim of an extended rollout timing, maybe.
Meaning ignoring the reality all around them.
Exactly right. Okay. Exactly right. I was about to say that. This is not a particularly good time to be apolitical if you're a political figure.
Correct.
And I know that the sort of public stance from Michelle Obama is that she's never going to run. She doesn't see herself as a politician, but she is still a political figure. And I'm not familiar with the backstory of why this show launched right now, but the note should have been maybe in another year, because it does feel really disheartening. Like we're getting slammed with a ton of really destabilizing, horrifying developments that we don't know the outcome of, and we need some sort of assurance that there's a political engagement on the Democratic side. And when something like this goes out and it goes, everybody wants to be Martha Stewart. But it just feels a little weird.
Are you a purist in terms of podcasts and video podcasts and that sort of stuff? You're okay or no?
deep in my private life, I'm a purist, but in my professional life,
Okay.
I go where the story is. So I do have to, embrace this video trend as much as I can.
Yeah, well, the obvious problem is you can't be running around doing your laundry or going for a walk the beauty of the podcast to me is you don't have to watch it, but
Yeah, you can't drive when you're watching a YouTube video.
you
That's a
cannot.
very
It
good
makes
point.
it a little bit more difficult.
Okay, so you put out your list of the best of 2025 so far. People should go and check it out because we're only going to get to do a couple. Marjorie and I got in this morning and we both said to each other, we are in love. Meaning this embedded thing is what we've been waiting for forever. And it's humiliating because it's an NPR thing. I hadn't even heard about it.
It is an NPR thing.
Okay,
Woo,
so
woo, woo.
talk about it for a second, then we'll play a little sound here, Nick.
Right. So embedded is NPR's catch-all project for really well investigative reporting or just long-form reporting pieces. And this new season called Alternate Reality, is hosted by Zach Mack, a former employee at Vox Media, where I work. He essentially builds a show out of a bet he makes with his father, who believes in all sorts of right-wing conspiracies that you can probably think of. And, as a son who loves his dad, he still tries to have a really strong relationship with his father. But at some point, there's a breaking point. He goes, put up or shut up, make a couple of predictions. And if these predictions don't come through by the end of the year being 2024 or last year, somebody's going to win I'm going to win $10,000. And if something comes through in your list, I will pay you $10,000. And what transpires is a really, really sort of tragic and beautiful story about a family in disrepair.
So in these predictions, so far he's predicted, among other things, the father, that both Obama and Biden will be arrested, the Clintons found guilty of murder, the Trump would be reinstated without an election, cleared of all things, and number 10, well, here's number 10, here it is.
Eventually, we landed on his final prediction for 2024, his boldest one.
And then number 10.
Number 10. I threw this in because I thought you'd be excited about it.
Yeah, it's an exciting one. It's probably the most exciting one.
The U.S. will come under martial law in 2024 because of mass rioting and chaos. So the military will have to step in.
For the record, I was never actually excited about the possibility of this happening.
I don't know how I had never heard of this season. This is unbelievably great.
To me, this captures, this guy's more extreme than a lot of our family members, but so many people are in this mess with families who believe these bizarre things.
The brainwashing of my dad we talked about.
And the mother is fed up. She's ready to leave him. And this guy's deep into the religious stuff, and God is telling him things, and he's got this prophet person, but he doesn't sound crazy. I think it's so brilliantly done.
Yeah, what I feel this Max project does really well is that he hyper focuses on the fact that he loves his father.
Yeah.
And that there's a real genuine relationship that he's trying his best, that you get the sense that maybe his dad is trying his best in his own way, but there are certain lines that his dad will never cross in a way that Mac wouldn't.
I'm really glad.
It's tragic. Yeah.
I'm so glad you said that, because we get so many callers when we talk about these kinds of topics who sadly say, and they're really heartbreaking, I don't speak to my father anymore. My sister and I haven't spoken except about what we're going to do for Thanksgiving in years. And so that point you just made is a really, really important one. And I think this is just terrific.
At the end of some of these conversations, I think the father or the kid will say, well, that was a good conversation. We managed to have a good conversation, to underscore what you're saying about how they're both really trying to cross this divide or find some middle ground, and it's just so hard.
Absolutely. And, we're in a time of great polarization with strangers. And if you can cross that bridge of your own father, it does raise the question of how do you communicate and connect with somebody who's a stranger who's so diametrically opposed to you. That's the sort of tragedy of this piece, which is ultimately a really beautiful one.
Yeah. By the way, the brainwashing of my dad, when I said I wasn't talking about my dad, even though there were issues there, it's a great piece that you should just check out.
Yes, it is a great piece. Now let's go to the one done right here at GBH about the lottery in Massachusetts, called Scratch and Win. We have a little sound from that one too, and then you can tell us all about it, and Jim will tell us.
Here's the sound.
Issue.
It incorporates some GBH archival audio from a 1973 radio special on gambling.
Illegal gambling is a way of life in Boston and across the Commonwealth.
illegal gambling run by organized crime was everywhere.
$2 billion a year is being gambled illegally.
We've averaged about 500 arrests a year.
It was a big problem.
Illegal gambling is wrong.
Illegal gamblers have ways of making people pay.
And no amount of law enforcement could solve it.
Perhaps the most you can hope to do with such a public desire to indulge is to try to keep it at some kind of tolerable level.
And obviously Ian, who made this, who now is at GBH, also made The Big Dig, which was spectacular a year or so ago. What do you think of this, Nick?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love The Big Dig, and I think this kind of is, it follows in the tradition of like, this is actually a story about states, but we're gonna organize it in a way that's like super exciting. Gambling's becoming an increasingly huge part of American life, right? After the Supreme Court ruling in the late 2010s, and now there are DraftKings ads and there are online betting ads just about everywhere. What I kind of love about this piece is that it makes you think about the relationship that the government should have with just managing vices, and how even that is really, really challenging. Like it is an admission that that there are certain aspects of human nature that's just going to be there. In this case, it's the sort of addiction to risk and gambling, and how when you even take it out from the shadows, a lot of the story is, at least at the beginning part, is like taking it out of criminal sort of hands and institutionalizing it basically. You're making a weird compact with the nature of your society, and this is a show that kind of makes you think a lot about that.
You know what I loved? Ian Cost does so well. I mean, one of the first segments, he has interviews all these people about scratch tickets. They're how much they love the scratch ticket and how much money that the stores can make off them. And also, if you're into old time politics, the Irish Pauls that used to run this place. I mean, Bob Crane, the singing
Former
Irish
treasurer,
Paul.
yeah.
I mean, it's great. Our friends Renee Loth and Frank Phillips, Globe reporters, were interviewed. But you do have a small issue, though, Jim.
Well, I wouldn't say an issue. By the way, I'll be clear. I happen to love Scratch and Win. And Ian is a wonderful storyteller, by the way. These are great
and the interviews
stories
are great.
about things you'd think were dry. Big Dig, lottery tickets.
Yeah.
It isn't a criticism, it's an issue. I am obsessed with lottery, not because of just the story as Ian tells it. I'm obsessed because it's Robin Hood in reverse. It takes disproportionately huge amounts of money. I wrote a piece for the Globe a few years ago. The average person in Chelsea, Massachusetts spent 10% of their income on the lottery. The average person in Weston spent almost nothing. The person in Weston got local aid from the lottery, and the person in Chelsea got a disproportionately small share. So inequity is a huge, to me, part of the story, but I can't at all fault Ian because he told a different angle in the story just beautifully. And it's really important because gambling, a government sponsored gambling, as you're touching, is just a huge part of how we fund things we care about for ourselves.
Jim wants to take away the dream.
Well,
That's what he wants to do.
Actually, I would get rid of the lottery if I were
dreaming over there of a better life.
We're talking to Nick Quack. Nick, I want to skip your other top of 2025 so far, and people can go check it out, because you wrote a piece about one of my favorite shows the last few years, season 3 of White Lotus. And the rule on the show, by the way, is no spoilers, so you're not allowed to say that Jennifer Coolidge dies in the second.
Right.
Oops,
we should tell him.
Too late, by the way.
We should tell him what the third one is, The Economist Scam.
Yeah. Well, there are others, too. There are others on the list.
Yes.
But they can get that. What was your take on, the whole White Lotus series, but particularly season 3, which we're 3/4 the way into?
Yeah. Oh man, I did not expect to be talking about White Lotus.
Is that okay with you?
No, absolutely.
Okay.
I've been thinking a lot about it because we're walking up to the finale soon.
Yeah.
In about 2 weeks. In many ways, it is the slowest, and I do feel like a lot of people in my life who've watched White Lotus, they're feeling a little dissatisfied with the pace and the sort of the laconic vibe of this season. But I think I'm like connecting to what it's doing thematically a lot more than the first 2 seasons. And it really does seem like it's trying to grapple with like the death of the self in a sort of poppy television show. And I'm thinking about this primarily through the character of Saxon, who's played by Patrick Schwarzenegger. He's the sort of finance bro son who has been placed in all sorts of compromising situations over the course of the season. And it seems that over the course of the season, everything that is the building block of his identity is being taken away. Like he is very much his son's father. He loves his job, which is now compromised. And he's presenting to be extremely aggressively heterosexual. And even that is being taken away from him. And I feel like he's the key of what's going on this season, which is every single one of these characters, most of them at least, are dealing with the death of how they understand themselves. And to do that in one of the most beautiful places on earth is such a fascinating expression of the cravenness of wealth.
Yeah.
So I'm really connecting with this season personally.
Yeah, I think it's gotten better and better as it's gone along. I mean, I was watching the 6th episode last Sunday night. I was all excited, and they do that very clever thing where you have the crime, the bad crime at the beginning, the first show, right, and then you're trying to figure out how we get to that, which is another little teaser that they do very well.
I love it. And you know what you should read, by the way? We'll make a recommendation to you. A regular guest on our show is the travel critic of Globe, Christopher Muther, who has been to all the 4 seasons that were the hosts of all 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And it's pretty great. By the way, we should say...
podcast. We should get that.
I was going to say the other ones. The other ones are that Nick writes about the best so far in 2025. Bad Therapist, Scam Inc., and Coming Out, all fabulous recommendations.
And they're at vulture.com if you want to read the whole piece. The best podcast of 2025 at vulture.com.
Nick, it's wonderful to see you as always. Thanks so much for your time.
A pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. And Okay, that was our podcaster, Nick Qua, and we thank him very much for joining us once again. After the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by former Massachusetts GOP chair and former administrator of USAID under George W. Bush, Andrew Natsios. But right now, we're going to do 2 more things.
Okay, as always, 2 more things. You go first.
Well, you go first this time.
Really?
I'm disorganized.
Okay, so yesterday, after Marjorie Taylor Greene, chair of the DOJ subcommittee in the House, concluded what she called her anti-American airwaves hearing with the heads of NPR and PBS, she held a press conference to talk about it. Well, here she is in typically measured Marjorie Taylor Greene tones, answering, or actually not answering, a question from a British reporter for Sky News attempting to ask her about the Signal group chat that went awry.
So the Defense Secretary...
What country are you? Wait, what country are you from?
From the UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay,
no. You should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives?
No. Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about
migrants? No, do you care? Okay, you're done.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk? About service members fighting for your country?
I don't care about your fake news. Do you have a relevant question? This is an American journalist. Thank you.
I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asked.
I'm not answering her question.
Very impressive. We don't give a crap about that either. So now Marjorie Taylor Greene's goal, I think, as you know, with the hearings, is to pave the way for defunding all of public media. But it turns out, according to a poll done by the Pew Research Center earlier this month, Marjorie, only 24% of Americans support defunding, PBS and NPR, good news for us. Almost twice as many, 43%, oppose defunding, while 33% are short. Now, don't get too excited because you're going to feel comfortable based on those polling numbers. That would be a false sense of security. Because when Taylor Greene goes public with new info, Marjorie, the Jewish space lasers have been determining what Marjorie, that's Marjorie Egan, and I have decided to talk about on the show. The whole thing could unravel. So I guess what I'm saying is, with some trepidation, Marjorie, is stay tuned either on your radio or on your phone, or if you're wearing one of those little tin foil hats. That's the end of it.
Okay. All right.
We don't give a crap about what your question is.
No, we don't. We don't
Not
care.
at all. No.
So my question is, what would it take, Jim, to sell your soul, to face up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine? Well, not that much for these 2 gents. This guy that works at a water company pled guilty Friday after federal authorities said he worked with a now former Massachusetts state trooper to give false passing scores to his drivers, some of these that needed commercial driver's licenses, and they failed the exam, or they only took part of the exam. In one case, the water guy admitted getting text from the state trooper that described one licensed applicant as an idiot who had no idea what he's doing. He should have failed about 10 times already on this test, but the trooper let him pass the test anyway. Well, guess what the bribe was that the water guy gave to the state trooper?
I happen to know, but go ahead.
It was water bottles.
Water bottles.
And iced tea.
They come cheap.
Yeah, not any water bottles. It was Fiji water bottles. They go for like $11.96 for a 6-pack on Amazon. But you can get the iced tea for 79 cents at Target. So you think to yourself, 20 years in jail, $250,000 fine. Let me tell you, before I was going to ruin my reputation, lose that all-important state trooper pension, be sentenced to 20 years in prison, I think I might need a higher-end bribe. You know what I mean?
Do you want to credit somebody for that, or do you want to do that?
It's from the Boston Globe. No, it's from Mass Live.
Mass Live story?
Yes, Mass Live. He wrote
Great
the story.
Can
Yeah.
I say something? I hope you don't take it the wrong way.
What?
We don't give a crap about your opinion. We really. By the way, if people have not seen Marjorie Taylor Greene talking to this reporter, this is like, I mean, we do not give a crap about your opinion. Go back to your country, etc.
And if I'm going to face 20 years in prison,
you do it.
I want something big, like an electric car, not a Tesla.
Not a Tesla. We
maybe
know that.
like a month-long cruise.
Home charger.
Maybe some Eton crank radios. A couple of those
emergency crank radios. To
couple
you.
of those smug mugs.
Thank you.
I don't go cheap, Jim. I just want you to know. Okay.
Coming up after the news.
Up after the news, we're going to talk to Andrew Natsios, who used to run
I'm looking forward to that.
USAID under George W. Bush. We're going to ask him about USAID. We're also going to ask him about the GOP. What the hell happened? You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH comes from you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, outlier author Malcolm Gladwell, and geopolitical economist Pippa Malmgren. BostonSpeakers.org. And the Massachusetts Health Connector for Business. New premium value plans can help small business owners find and offer accessible employee health benefits. Learn more at mahealthconnector.org/business. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Celebrity Series, presenting the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, featuring Mr. Ailey's timeless masterpiece, Revelations, April 24th through 27th at the Bach Center Wang Theater. Tickets at celebrityseries.org.
GBH's own.
GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Federal Department of Health and Human Services will soon be dramatically restructured and downsized by 20,000 full-time jobs. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin reports Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the plan will streamline the department and align it with his goal.
Offices and 9 HR departments.
He said the restructuring would save taxpayers money and improve the health of the American population. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
The administration's preparing to impose 25% tariffs on all imports of cars and car parts. The president says the levies will encourage automakers to build in the U.S. and boost domestic revenue. NPR's Frank Ordonia says auto unions are happy.
United Auto Workers Union was praising this decision, saying it's time to, quote, end the free trade disaster. But the big three automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis, are very concerned. They have production spread out across the world, including Canada and Mexico. They've raised big concerns in the past when these threats were posed. And a group that represents foreign auto workers like BMW, Honda, has also raised concerns that it's all just going to make it more expensive to produce cars and lead to higher prices.
NPR's Franco Ordonez. Israel has demolished more than 200 residential buildings in the occupied West Bank as part of its ongoing military operation. Operation, which Israel says is for counterterrorism, has displaced tens of thousands of Palestinians.
With little to no belongings. Israel has since said they won't be allowed to return home. International aid groups warn that humanitarian needs are growing as displacement continues. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
It's NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Cambridge City Councilor Paul Toner, who faces charges for allegedly patronizing a high-end Cambridge brothel network, spent nearly a year trying to prevent his name from surfacing in the case prior to his arraignment. A series of legal filings obtained by Harvard Crimson through a public records request show that Toner's lawyer, Timothy Flaherty, spent nearly 14 months working to keep his client's hearings private. Toner's been charged with sexual conduct for a fee for his alleged involvement with the brothel network at last Friday's show cause hearing. And while these hearings are typically private, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court upheld a ruling to open the hearings to the public in December 2024. Cambridge Cambridge police reports from the hearing show that that Toner had frequent contact with the brothel, reporting that he agreed to pay to engage in sex with a woman at least 13 times between February and September of 2023. Amtrak reaching out to passengers who may have been exposed to a person with measles on a Boston to Washington train. Globe reports that the incident happened a week ago and some passengers on that train could have been exposed to the virus. Amtrak officials say the train, Amtrak's Northeast Regional 175, left Boston at 3:15 p.m. on March 19th, and the Mass Department of Public Health tells the Globe that the infected person boarded the train at Penn Station, not in New York, but at Penn Station in New York City. 44 degrees outside our studios here in Brighton. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live tomorrow at the Boston Public Library. Today we're in Brighton and we're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there. And on April 8th, the mayor, Michelle Wu, will join us for an hour of Ask the Mayor from 11 to 12, April 8th at the Boston Public Library. Our next guest started his long public service career right here in Massachusetts as the state representative who co-authored Prop 2.5. We'll forgive him for that, by the way. He went on to lead the Massachusetts...
Some of us thought it was a good idea, actually.
He went on to lead the Massachusetts Republican Party and later served as chair of the Mass Turnpike Authority, including in Big Dig days in the Cellucci administration. Andrew Natsios moved on to the national stage, serving, among other positions, as administrator of the U.S. Agency for International Development during the George W. Bush administration. USAID, as you know, has been dismantled by Trump and Musk and Doge. The agency has been a source of soft power for America, funding healthcare initiatives, educational programs, including an Arabic version of Sesame Street, which was criticized by President Trump during his speech at the joint session of Congress. Well, here's what Natsios said about the children's show in an interview with the New York Times. Quote, "The biggest weapon against al-Qaeda and Islamic extremism is Sesame Street." He'll explain that later. He's now a professor at the Bush School of Government at Texas A&M University, director of the Scowcroft Institute of International Affairs, and he joins us on Zoom. And he's got a terrific piece, by the way, in Foreign Affairs in February, the title of which is Don't Gus USAID. Andrew Natsios, great to have you. Thanks for your time.
Nice to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. So tell us, what was USAID doing in its pre-Trump days, and why was Sesame Street so great?
Well, let me talk about Sesame Street first. I actually signed the program, and I think it was in 2002 when I visited Egypt, to put a Coptic Christian puppet in the Sesame Street because in Egyptian society, there's a lot of discrimination against Coptic Christians who've been there, by the way, long before Islam ever went to Egypt. The Christian church is 2,000 years old in Egypt. And it's not the Egyptian government. The Egyptian government, actually, the foreign minister was a Copt. At one point, Boutros Ghali became Secretary General of the UN, their cabinet minister. It's the society. And so we put the puppet in to try to change attitudes. Well, I haven't seen the data, but the data seems to indicate, from what I'm told, that there has been a shift. 98% of Egyptian women with children watch Sesame Street, or they did until, I think the program went from 2001 to 2017, but 98% of Egyptian women and their children watch Sesame Street. It changed attitudes. So, in fact, what these people did in these other countries, in Lebanon and I think in Pakistan, is to, not Lebanon, I think it was Iraq and Pakistan, is to put Christians at risk because one of the reasons for the Sesame Street is to reduce discrimination. And there's discrimination in the Middle East against Christians. There is. I mean, everybody knows that. So that's one issue, but there's a larger issue. Sesame Street doesn't teach people to kill each other. That's what Al Qaeda teaches.
Yeah.
In these madrasas, and I know that. I've been to the madrasas, actually, in Pakistan and other areas, and I've tried to negotiate, moderating the curriculum they have, in Pakistan in particular. But what's the choice? The choice is the Sesame Street program, which trains children or educates children not to use violence, not to fight with each other, or Al Qaeda. And literally, that's the choice in the news program and in the TV program. If you talk to many of the government ministers, they're very enthusiastic about having it. I might add, AID pays for 25% of it. 75% of the cost was picked up by Sesame Street. This is a public-private partnership, and it's been very effective also in health messaging. What do you tell kids before? Here, wash your hands before you eat. That's very important in terms of, in the developing world, it's a principal source of infection of diseases that kill kids, is dirty hands for kids when they eat. So there are health messages, and they also teach literacy. And in the United States, kids go to school with more advanced skills if they watch Sesame Street. So it has educational, health, value effect. It's a very good program, but these attacks were mindless in my view on it.
So we won't even ask you about the condoms going to Gaza. By the way, in the spirit of full
no condoms going to Gaza.
In the spirit of full disclosure, my daughter was the letter K on Sesame Street
there
one
you go.
year.
There you
now,
go.
Andrew Natsios, that's a perfect example to start with. My fear is that when USAID came under attack, obviously, in February, the average American had no idea what USAID had done, just the alleged horrible things. Spend a minute giving a broader picture than just the Sesame Street thing about the multiplicity of things that you and people like you did in this agency.
Number one, 90% of what they do is not controversial. If you explained it to any American, they'd say, this is a wonderful idea. There are some programs that are ideologically divisive between the two parties and between liberals and conservatives. But if you ask the career people, they actually say the Republican administrators they prefer because the Republican administrators tend to be very very good managers and leaders.
Says a Republican administrator, I should say.
Well, I can say that, but ask the career people, and they'll say that Peter McPherson, who was the head of aid under Reagan, is one of the great administrators in the history of the agency, and he's a friend of mine, mentor of mine, actually. So what is it we do? Now this is before they destroyed it.
Sure,
obviously.
of course.
And this business about they're making it more efficient, I could use crude language, but I'm on the air and my wife said mind my language, so I will. Okay, it's baloney. The notion that they're reforming this, they're not reforming, they destroyed the agency. And it's outrageous what they did. There are 5,000 Foreign Service nationals who've worked for aid for decades, who are doctors, who have PhDs, they went to medical school, and they're on the local staff because most of our staff, in fact, were not Americans. They were from the developing countries. They know the local language, they know the local colors, they work for aid for many, many years, and they're being laid off now. They say they're going to have regional missions. That's baloney. They're destroying the local presence of AID. But let me explain what we do. 55% of the budget before all of this went for public health programs, preventative programs, because there's a difference between curative care and preventative care. The AID and every aid agency in the world, the NGOs, emphasize preventative care, which means we immunize children against disease. Now that's become I can't imagine it's a controversial issue. You know what the life expectancy in 1900 was in the United States? 45 years. Before COVID, it was almost 80. You know why? Because of immunizations. That's why. It shouldn't be a controversial issue now. It's ridiculous for people to say they're not going to have their children immunized against measles. But we immunize hundreds of millions of children all over the developing world, which is why the death rates went down dramatically across the global south. we provided voluntary family planning, not abortion, voluntary family planning. And if we focused it on Asia, where the density of population was really a serious risk for instability, the lack of economic growth. This is in the 60s and 70s when the program was started. And it reduced the fertility rates to a more manageable level, and it was voluntary. People didn't have to participate if they didn't want to. We have a huge program that President Bush started, an HIV/AIDS program that was treating, at one point, 33 million people. I think it's down to 28, or it was down to 28. It's down to 0 now because, and I didn't know this myself. I signed the contracts, or not signed, I approved the contract when I was aid administrator to aggregate all of the demand within the whole agency on health. So we had what was called a supply chain health contract. And it was like $10 billion. It was enormous. But we put malaria medication, TB, immunizations in it. We put HIV/AIDS in it. We put all sorts of medical countermeasures and all that. And it brought the cost down. What I didn't know is that the UN was even ordering through this system. In other words, the Global Fund for HIV/AIDS was getting their antiretrovirals from the same contract because it was a lower price.
By the way, you should add to this PEPFAR program that initiated by George Bush saved millions and millions and millions of lives.
Yeah. And I also... It's very clear, if you don't take antiretrovirals and you have AIDS, you die. It's not a debatable question, for heaven's sake.
I also read where USAID was helping get prosthetic limbs for Ukrainian soldiers who've been injured in battle and supplying these foods like this corn soy blend and this plumpy nut material of food for children who are so malnourished. They need that kind of nourishment to survive, to get to where they can eat again.
But 60% of the food that goes to the World Food Program, which is the largest UN agency, comes from USAID. It comes from the Food for Peace program that was started under President Eisenhower in 1954, even before AID was created under Jack Kennedy. What AID did was to consolidate the programs that were started by Truman and Eisenhower and put them in one agency in 1961 by executive order and then by statute. It is a statutory agency. That's the other thing that really annoys me. It's in law. You cannot do away, in my view, and I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think you need to be a lawyer. I'm a former legislator. If you pass a law saying this agency will exist, here's a 400-page law explaining what they'll do. You can't just go in and abolish them.
So wait. So why are your fellow Republicans, Andrew Natsios, not reclaiming the constitutional authority they have to decide whether to fund or defund a program?
I talked to some of them privately, and they won't say they're afraid, but they are afraid. They're afraid of primaries. Rand Paul said publicly a few weeks ago, who's a libertarian, doesn't support any of these programs. He said he wants a vote on the destruction of aid because if it goes to the Senate, he said a great majority of the Republican senators will vote against the cuts and against the destruction of the agency, and he wants to embarrass them. Okay, so he knows what the votes are. He tried to cut the aid budget long before Trump by 50%, and he got 12 votes in the Senate. 12 votes. Okay, the overwhelming majority of Republican senators support foreign aid, and half of the House members do too. Republican House members. The problem is they don't want primaries, and the administration is actually telling people, you vote against this stuff, you say anything publicly, you're going to have a primary against a MAGA person. So I know some of the senators are former congressmen who served on the committees that I used to testify before.
Well, and also Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, who now is helping to shut this program down, was arguably the highest profile defender of the wonderful work that USAID did. But here's the key question, I think, for the American people, Andrew Natsios, former administrator of USAID. Assuming that you're not the kind of, well, you are, assuming one is not the kind of person who actually just cares about the health and welfare of their fellow man, why should I care that USAID, we get rid of the worst because there's some excesses. You've written and said that. I think everybody agrees. The best of USAID, why should I care that we provide necessary vaccines for people? Or what's the benefit for me?
Well, let me talk about American foreign policy. Now, I am a practicing Orthodox Christian. I take this from a theological standpoint. Most people don't, but I do. That is not a good explanation when you're dealing with the power politics of the world or in Washington. And so there are legitimate foreign policy reasons for doing this. And I'll tell you a story. My favorite story is I was in the Oval Office. President Bush had me there knowing this was going to happen.
This is Djibouti, right?
This is Djibouti.
I love this story. Go ahead.
Okay, so I knew the president of Djibouti. He's out of office now, but I used to go to him for advice. And when I was envoy to Sudan, I said, Mr. President, what should I do to deal with Bashir? He said, Andrew, they don't trust you. They think that you want regime change. I said, well, I do, but I'm not going to try it. He said, you need to moderate that because they're not going to listen to you if you don't. But anyway,
okay, tell the story.
So the story is he just signed a base agreement. The United States, the only U.S. military base in Africa is in Djibouti, a little country, 300,000 people, right in the tip of the Horn of Africa, in an extremely important area of the world from the U.S. military standpoint. And he turned to the president of Djibouti and said, what can I do for you, sir, now that we've agreed to this? He said, I want an aid mission in my country. And it wasn't a bribe. He said, I want schools built. I want to create a power grid so people have electricity. And we are a nomadic society. We want help in improving the health of our herds as we export them for revenue for our herders. And that's what we did. Okay, and the program, by the way, was still there at the same level that I created it 31 years ago or 30 years ago.
Well, but also as a foreign policy issue, that's a wonderful story and a wonderful example. It seems to me that for an administration that's so concerned about the rising power of China, that where we withdraw is almost a vacuum bringing the Chinas of the world in.
And the European countries, from what I've read, have withdrawn too. Netherlands, yeah, they followed our lead.
They're following us.
Yes.
People always say, well, the Europeans don't follow us. I said, that's baloney. They do follow us when we do good things and when we do bad things.
Yeah.
And we're doing bad things right now because of this, in my view. So let me tell you what is happening. It may be a vacuum. It already is a vacuum, and the Chinese are right in there. Now, I've been involved in some exchanges with the Chinese on a formal basis through the Asia Society. There are 4 senior aid officials retired and 4 Chinese officials. And we've been having dialogues with them. I didn't know this. There's no Chinese missions like AID has missions in 60 countries. Most of our staff's in the field. It's not in Washington. Mm-hmm. The Chinese have no one in the field. They don't even have people in the embassy that coordinate their programs. It's all done from Beijing. You know what they're going to do now? They're following our model. And we used to have 20,000 scholarships a year during the Cold War, bring kids to get their advanced degrees and go back to their countries. Many of them went on to become presidents of countries, cabinet ministers, members of parliament. I was in Macedonia, Slavic Macedonia. As a Greek American, I have to be careful of how I characterize it. I was there just before 9/11. And I always met with the FSNs, the Foreign Service, the local staff, separately from the Americans. And I said, have any of you ever thought of running for office? 2 guys stood up and said, Mr. Natsios, we just got elected to parliament. You know how we got elected? Because we worked at USAID. AID is so respected here that we got elected, and we postponed resigning to take our seats because we wanted to talk to you. Now, these missions are training grounds for local elites. Guess who's going to be the new training ground? The Chinese are. All over the world. They've taken over the economies. Now they're taking over the aid system, and we're letting them do it. They are following, you know how many scholarships they give a year? We gave 18 to 20,000. They said, this is very successful, the American program. They're doing 40,000 scholarships a year. Now, people say, oh, what difference does it make? The people who get their PhDs and their master's degrees and their law degrees and their medical degrees go on to be, I'll give you an example. The health minister in a big West African country, I won't mention which one, I don't want to get him in trouble. He went and got his medical degree with an American AID scholarship. When they had to buy some not antiretrovirals, the vaccines for COVID. He said, I know what the Americans, how very careful they are about approving any new medicines. The Chinese and the Russians are not. So he banned any Chinese or Russian vaccines during the COVID pandemic. He said, I only want American vaccines. Now, you know what OMB used to say to me? He said, I know your scholarship programs, Andrew, prove that they have an effect next year. I said, they don't have an effect next year. They have effect when the people become cabinet ministers, or presidents, or members of parliament. Who is going to sign the trade agreements and negotiate the treatment? Who's going to give licenses for mining companies? Who is going to write trade deals with American businesses? All the people with degrees from American or Chinese or not so much Russian institutions, but it's Chinese versus ours. We are surrendering the development platforms that AID has had for 60 years to the Chinese, and no one seems to understand that in the administration. I'm appalled by it.
I got to read a text first. The texter, anonymous texter said, so why are you two, Marjorie and me, why are you two afraid to have a Republican on to give an opposing view as we're speaking to Andrew Natsios, the former chair of the Republican Party of Massachusetts? Go ahead, Marjorie. I just wanted to clarify for the record.
I'm glad that the texter asked about Republicans because you mentioned speaking privately. We hear this all the time. I speak privately to this congressperson, that senator, and they all say this is horrible what's going on, but I'm afraid of a primary. So are we just going to go down this road here, cutting all these agencies and Elon Musk getting into Social Security and the IRS? And we had this horrible story today about a woman from Tufts kind of kidnapped off the street because she was had the gall to contribute to a pro-Palestinian, as in Save the Palestinians op-ed at Tufts. I mean, is anything going to happen here with the Republicans or not?
Well, I can't answer that question. I can answer for me, okay? I am of the old Republican Party that believes, one, that the states and municipalities should be running a lot of public services. Now they're giving orders how to run elections out of Washington. That's not a federal function. The only intervention federal government has had in elections is when certain states would not allow Black Americans to vote. That was a basic constitutional right. I would have voted for the Voting Rights Act. In fact, most of the Voting Rights Act was written by a Republican congressman from Ohio, who I worked for as an intern when I was attending college at Georgetown 55 years ago. So I would have supported that. But other than that, we don't interfere in local elections that way. That's a state issue, not a national issue. And this is happening across the board, and it's a violation of 100 years of Republican and conservative political philosophy. And free trade is part of what the Republican Party has stood for as well. These tariffs, that's for the labor unions like tariffs, not the Republican Party. And we used to be the party of business. I'm pro-business, I'm pro-free markets, and now apparently we're not. We want the federal government choosing winners and losers, which is not a Republican principle, I might add.
Well, since you're going down a list of things, we only have 30 seconds left. Do you want to take this time, Andrew Natsios, to apologize for never voting for a tax increase when you're in the Massachusetts legislature?
I never voted for a tax increase. I filed Proposition 2.5. And I was a legislator of the year for the Citizens for Limited Taxation and the Mass Municipal Association. So you look at my record and call me a liberal. I am not a liberal.
So you are a real Republican, so we can reassure that texter. Are you not, Mr. Natsios?
Yes, you can reassure them.
Okay.
Hey, Andrew Natsios, we really, really appreciate your time today. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with Andrew Natsios, a real Republican. He's also a professor at the Bush School of Government at Texas A&M University, the former administrator of USAID under George W. Bush, and the head of the Republican Party here in Massachusetts. Thank you very much again.
Good to see you. Be well.
Okay. Up next, It is our favorite segment of the week, at least my favorite segment of the week. Another Am I the A-hole segment. Today, well, I'm not going to tell everybody what we're talking about. We're going to talk about, we'll tell you when we get back. Another Am I the A-hole segment is coming up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
I'm Arun Roth. Coming up on GBH's All Things Considered, new data show that Latino-owned businesses in Massachusetts are doing better. The Red Sox are starting their 2025 campaign with their season opener in Texas against the Rangers. And the war between Russia and Ukraine is fought largely in the skies. And while Ukraine is at the cutting edge of drone innovation, Russia isn't far behind. Those stories and all the day's news starting at 4 on GBH 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Turkish Airlines. The Stopover in Istanbul program offers passengers connecting via Istanbul Airport the opportunity to explore the city's history and cultural life. More information at turkishairlines.com. And MIT Federal Credit Union, with memberships open to the general public, offering share certificates and certificates for retirement to help members reach their savings goals. Membership info at mitfcu.org. Federally insured by NCUA.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're streaming in youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. Is that Friday? Yes, it is. It's Thursday afternoon. Time to decide the moral purity of a total stranger. Welcome once again to Am I the A-hole? Anyone who's ever taken a flight knows the pain of having to figure out how to get to and from the airport. Do you brave the shuttles and bus transfers? Do you drop $60 or whatever on an Uber or a Lyft or a taxi? Or do you turn to family and loved ones to be there for you? What if that person you're turning to is your spouse? How bad do circumstances need to be where they're not willing to pick you up? This week's scenario involves a wife who posted to Reddit she refused to pick her husband up from the airport. She had traveled ahead with their 2 kids to her parents' house in Ohio. He was coming on a different day, but this is the key. He forgot his ID, and since he did, he was late and he missed his initial flight, meaning his new flight would get in after midnight at an airport 90 minutes away from where his wife and kids were staying. So here's the number, 877-301-8970. Is the wife being an a-hole for stranding her husband at the airport for the night, saying, go get a hotel? Wasn't it just an honest mistake by her husband to forget his ID? Or is she justified in saying, figure it out, I'll get you in the morning, because he was acting irresponsibly? The number is 877-301-8970. Now, I'm going to ask Marjorie which side she's on.
Yep.
She's going to do what she does every week, which is on one hand.
No.
On the other hand.
I'm not on this one.
Oh, you have a position?
The husband is definitely the jerk in this situation. You know why? First of all, he forgot his ID.
By the reason she said jerk is whenever one person texts and says, I don't like you saying a-hole, she calls it a jerk.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion.
That's right. I knew a little bit more Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, I got the same first name. She spells it differently.
I know.
Thank
Okay,
God.
so who's the a-hole?
The a-hole is the husband, because the mother, who did remember her ID, she's got 2 little kids with her.
We call her the wife.
The wife, okay, the wife, but she's also a mother.
She is a mother.
She's got 2 kids, one's 4 and one's a year and a half. That's a lot. So he wants her, and she got the 4-year-old and the 1.5-year-old, to come pick him up at the airport.
Correct.
At 12:30. She said to him,
Correct.
Sweetheart, just get a hotel.
She didn't say sweetheart. It was not nice.
She said, sweetheart. She said, honey, my liege, I just want you to get a hotel room for the night, and I'll pick you up in the morning.
You know what she actually said?
In the morning.
Shove that ID up your you-know-what and get a hotel room.
So she was right. He could have stayed overnight at the airport by the hotel and gone the next, and she could have come picked him up in the morning instead of getting home
the richness
at 3 o'clock in the morning
fine.
When she's got an 18-month-old.
By the way, her
that's gonna be
parents
up
can
at
take
6.
care of the kids in the meantime. The number's 877.
That's not in the story.
Yes, it is. 877-301-8970. Now, let me tell you how rich it is. That Marjorie is against the person who forgot his ID. Let me start with this. Do you know anybody who's ever forgotten or left anything anywhere? No, I'm serious. Do you know anybody like that?
Okay, I have a lot of problems
That'd be you.
losing things.
So if you were this person, you would like some sympathy. He
No,
didn't
I
intentionally.
wouldn't.
Excuse me. He didn't intentionally forget his ID. He forgot his ID. It's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
He then gets on the next flight available. He's getting there late. Go pick the damn guy up at the airport.
He could have gotten a hotel at the airport, and she would have picked him up right.
You really believe this? Or you're just doing this to aggravate me?
I'm serious. I'm serious. I mean, come on.
Do you want to not get picked when you're going to a strange town? Do you not want to be picked up by someone you know well or care about or cares about you?
He's a guy.
Okay.
What's he worried about?
Okay.
Okay. He at 12:30 at night he gets in. She's supposed to drive there. She's
Okay.
probably exhausted because she's got.
You have no idea. Is that in the
18-month-old.
story?
Jim, you know what?
What?
Were you ever a mother?
No, but you know what I was? I'm
Okay,
a person.
we don't give a crap about your opinion.
Exactly.
Boy, we can play this for
We
months.
are going to be playing this. Let me just say this here. All the times you forget stuff and you
Yeah.
say, can you cover for me? I'm not going to cover for you because you should have been more responsible and not left your keys, your lunch, milk for the
Well,
coffee,
you know what?
your pocketbook, your driver's
You know what I
license,
think
and
you're not
everything
doing?
else at home.
You're not driving an hour and a half to pick me up at the airport at 12:30 and get
And
home
believe
at 3
me, I'm
o'clock in the
not.
morning. You're not.
Exactly.
That
Okay,
is my point.
877. This
And
is
by the
getting
way,
out of control
By the
here.
way, we should mention
What?
the United pilot. They're flying.
Is this an
just a
incredible
quick
story?
aside. Okay, they're flying from Los. This is a true story.
This is a true story.
They're flying.
Well, this one is a true story.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just on a small scale.
That's right. The whole 787 jetliner, big, huge plane, flying from Los Angeles to Shanghai. And then the pilot realizes, whoops, I forgot my passport. So they have to turn around
257
in the middle
passengers.
of the flight, 2 hours into the flight. They had to turn around, go back to San Francisco. They landed at 5 o'clock because the pilot didn't have his passport. They don't take off again until 9 o'clock, and they arrive in Shanghai 6 hours later. How about being on that plane, Jim?
How about being on that plane? 877-301-8970. So let me set this up again because Marjorie, as always, has distracted us from the critical issue.
Yeah.
Is the wife an a-hole because she selfishly is unwilling to pick up her husband, who understandably unintentionally forgot his ID so couldn't get on the plane? Or is he the a-hole, as Marjorie suggests, and should be forced to get a hotel because he's a little bit later than he was originally intended to be? What's so funny?
Jim, you're being a jerkhole, says one texter. And then here's another one. He is the a-hole for wanting his wife and 2 babies to drive around to get his dumb ass in the middle of the night.
His babies are not coming to the airport.
How do you know?
Because I've spoken to him. Actually, I wasn't supposed to say this because we're supposed to stay
lots
arm's
of
length.
grandparents do not want to take care of an 18-month-old, let me tell you. Maybe
Well,
the 4-year-old.
I know one who does. Exactly. I'm looking at her. 877-30, babysitter in chief here. 877-301-8970. This is getting a little heated, and I don't mean it to be. Todd in Attleboro, you're going to start today's Who is the A-hole? Welcome.
Bingo. Well, I think it's the husband.
Absolutely.
If he didn't have an ID, he shouldn't get on the plane. That doesn't make any sense.
Correct.
Yeah.
And making her drive really, really late to go pick him up, no, he should get a hotel.
Absolutely.
That's just a bit. I would never do that to my husband. Say, come pick me up in Logan. He hates to drive to Logan.
That's
from
right.
Attleboro.
Todd, listen to this.
Wait a second. Why would
Listen
you
to
not?
what
Wait,
somebody
no. Let's ask Todd. Why would you not expect your husband to pick you up? I don't get it.
Kind of late. He hates to drive in Boston. Okay, and I can get a ride home. We have great MBTA service unless it's super late at night. And he works for a good hotel chain, so I can get a $50 hotel. For
There you go.
Well,
There
you
you go.
didn't tell us that
That's
part,
lucky.
Todd.
He could have stayed at the airport Hilton,
that's
even if he
lucky.
didn't.
What's that, Todd?
However, I am going to the airport in a couple of weeks to pick him up because he's home in Egypt. I'm going with his naturalization documents in case he has problems with immigration. I'm going to be there with the original.
Well, that is actually quite a wonderful story to end with there,
but
Todd.
it's
Thanks
a
for the call.
nerve-wracking. It's a nerve-wracking
What's
story. This is
nerve-wracking?
what everybody has to worry about now if they're from another country coming to the United States, that something may happen to them. It's very nerve-wracking.
Now, even though the following sound has absolutely nothing to do with what we're talking
play
about,
it
other than
anyway.
the fact that it's about airplanes, here's the most famous line from Airplane.
Can you fly this plane and land it?
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Sorry. I could hear that about 10,000
That
times.
was Leslie Nielsen. Oh, let's play one more.
Okay, you play one more.
This is, who's the guy that plays this? The guy that was in Seahon. What's his name?
Bridges.
Lloyd Bridges.
Thank
Okay.
you.
This is Lloyd Bridges, who has some substance abuse problems. And here he is talking about the crisis at the airport and how this wasn't a good week for him dealing with his substance abuse problems. Here he is.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking. It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking. It's like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines. It's like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Okay, it has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but we never miss an opportunity.
And his hair stands straight up in the air. Oh, my God. I could see that movie a
Can we
million
take some
times.
calls, actually,
yes,
if you don't
we
mind?
can.
Go ahead.
Marilee from Chestnut Hill. What do you think, Marilee?
Hey there, welcome.
You know, Jim is sniffing glue. I cannot believe this. My jaw is on my chest. And it's okay. Take the kids out of the picture.
Yeah.
It's still incredibly selfish.
Absolutely.
Why?
Thank you.
Wait a second. Marilee, she was going to drive the 90 minutes each way to pick him up. The only reason she is not is because she has to get her beauty rest or some crap like that.
At 3 o'clock in the morning with an 18-month-old.
Go ahead, Marilee.
Do you not realize how important sleep is to health?
That's right.
Yeah. Let's just sleep tomorrow. Make it up. Marilee, thank you. We thank you for the call. I'm not sniffing glue, just so you're clear.
I think we've learned a lot about Jim Browdy in this
what do you mean?
conversation.
No, I'm sympathetic, but you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
And by the way, do you think this guy would have done it for her? Absolutely, he would have done it for her.
I think he would have done it for her and the 2 children.
How about just for her?
50-50.
I would say that is untrue.
50-50 shot.
877-301-8970.
A woman with 2 babies has enough to do. Maybe the husband is the 3rd baby.
I repeat, would she have picked him up if he was on time? Yes. The answer is yes.
Yes,
it says yes.
What time was he supposed to get there?
The afternoon.
5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, she would
He's going to be a couple of minutes
She would
later.
have picked him up at 5 o'clock.
He's going to be a few minutes
It would
later.
have been rush hour traffic, but she would have done it because she's a good woman. And but this texter says the wife is a passive-aggressive a-hole. This marriage is doomed.
Exactly. That is what I was going to say.
That's the only texter who thinks that.
Didn't have the
Everybody else
courage
thinks the
to say
husband is an a-hole. The husband is an a-hole. He's a big boy. Get an Uber or something, waking small kids for bringing him home from the
She doesn't
airport.
have to wake the kids.
How do you know? There's nothing that
Excuse
says
me.
the parents are
Where's she?
stepping into the
I'm sorry.
breach.
We got to get to the calls. Who is she visiting?
She's visiting her parents.
Parents. Are parents alive if she's visiting them?
Yes, but lots of parents don't want to be responsible.
So that's
when they have an 18-month-old. The 4-year-old is one thing, but a lot of people don't like little babies. They freak out.
This is interesting. This also goes to the discredit of the wife. An anonymous texter is brilliant. The only reason the guy forgot his ID to begin with is because his wife wasn't home to remind him to bring it. So
That's
she's
right.
doubly at fault in this situation. Who are we going to here? What's going on? Who are we going to?
I don't know. I can read some more texts.
Well, we have a lot of calls, but which one are we going to next? Can you give us a little guidance here? The lights are not on here. You got Bernadette. You're in a truck. You're on Boston Public Radio. Thank you much for calling. Hi, Bernadette.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
I think actually that I feel sorry for the guy because, he's just another mediocre white man in America trying to make his way, and his wife is against him, his in-laws are against him.
That's right.
And the poor fella, how's he supposed to, do all those manly things if he has to think for himself?
It's true. He was a total merit hire, Bernadette, correct? Just didn't quite work out.
Bernadette, that was painful. Thank you very much for sharing your point of view. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Here's a texter who says, I have just traveled with a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, incredibly taxing for one person to do. As a husband who would do anything for my spouse, I have to say he is the a-hole.
Oh, wow.
There you go, Jim.
Okay, let's go to Ed in Lexington. What's up, Ed?
Oh, hey, thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
It's not fair to start with the clip from Airplane. I'm just barely still laughing here.
No, we are too. We love it.
We have a couple more.
Go ahead.
So in our family, we have a tradition that when you leave the house on vacation, you got to kind of suspend all of the expectations about being on time and being grumpy when people are late. So it's just part of the travel experience. I feel badly. I am going on the assumption that the grandparents are taking care of the little ones, and I just think she needs to saddle up and make a quick trip to the airport, stop at Dunk's, and welcome her husband home a little bit later than she thought.
Can I tell you, that is as beautifully put and tenderly put as anything I've ever heard. Ed, thank you.
Okay.
So that was really a lovely call. Thank you.
If it was me who missed my flight, I'd just stay in a hotel. Dude has skewed sense of entitlement, says the texter. His forgetting his ID is irrelevant. The issue is coming in on a late flight. It's perfectly reasonable for her to suggest he spend the night in a hotel. And another texter says,
You read that with such bias in your
Who
voice.
the F has no ID?
Yeah. Well, that actually is the question I hadn't thought about.
Yeah. Don't you usually have your ID in your wallet, which you usually take
I don't
with
carry
you
a wallet.
when you're going on a trip?
I don't carry a wallet.
You don't?
I don't.
What do you carry? Some little weird little Cambridge thing?
No,
or what?
Yes, we in Cambridge do not wear wallets.
What do you have, a money pack?
I have a fanny pack. A fanny pack. I only wear it. I got it at Pledge, exactly right. I got it during Pledge. It's
okay.
a GBH.
A fanny pack.
Whatever it is.
Should we play another line from Airplane?
No, this is off the rails. This is the whole segment.
Captain, how soon can you land? I can't tell. You can tell me. I'm a doctor.
Now, by the way, are we the only one? Oh, Jamie's laughing, so that's good. And Zoe's sorry. Hannah, you laughing? Oh, Hannah's laughing too. Not hard, but she's laughing nevertheless.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion.
By the way, if you didn't hear that at 12:55, this is Marjorie. If you just tuned in, this is Marjorie Taylor Greene at a press conference after her Doge, let's get rid of PBS and NPR hearing, and a reporter who has the temerity asked a question with a British accent because she is British from Sky News, and I mean,
you think Marjorie Taylor Greene would pick up her husband at 12:30 at the airport?
I don't know.
I don't think she has a husband anymore.
No,
though.
she used to.
Wasn't she involved in some tantric sex thing, or was
I
that
thought it was
somebody
Lauren
else?
Boebert. Oh no, that was one of them. Well, who had the thing
Can
at
we
the
check
gym?
who had the tantric
Who did the
sex?
thing at the? Thank you, John. John knows that too. John knows everything. No, you have a tantric sex question, call John Parker. That's my motto.
Yeah, she was carrying on with somebody at the gym.
Yeah.
I forget who was the tantric
You know who's
sex.
supposedly the tantric sex king of all time? Sting. Thank you.
Oh, we knew about that.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
that's a different
yeah,
story.
He really is. Yeah, he is really.
He's
he is
aged
one
well.
fine-looking man.
Bad.
We're having a great
Okay, that'd be
time
Jennifer
today.
Coolidge for those missed that. Gabrielle in Barblehead, we're talking about who is the a-hole. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me. You two are on a roll today.
A little small roll, but go ahead.
Wow. Okay, you can fact check me on this, but I've actually gotten to the airport without my ID, and I was still able to fly.
No,
Really?
no, not.
Yeah, this was after 9/11 in
Really?
Colorado, and I got to the airport without. It takes a little bit of. You have to go to an office and they check you out, but it is possible. So my point is, neither one of them is the a-hole. They should have just figured it out that there's another method.
Wait, before you get there, though, what do they do to prove you're who you are and you're not like some terrorist?
Yeah, I was afraid you would ask me that, and I don't really have the answer.
Okay.
I was trying to remember if in my wallet I had credit cards, and they just took me to an office, and I was panic-stricken just like this guy was, and I was able to get on the plane.
You're a good-looking woman, Gabrielle. Couple of guys in there looking for your wallet.
No, not at all, she says. I would question that. Okay, Gabrielle, that's a good...
okay.
Okay, thank you for the
Good
call.
luck. Thanks.
Thank you. Good luck to you, too.
bye.
Thank you. We need good luck here.
Okay, here's M from Acton. Hubby is the a-hole. 2 little kids to cover at night. A 3-hour round-trip ride for her. Never mind the ride. What's Uber and Lyft and taxis made for?
Can I make 90 minutes Uber and Lyft? I don't think so.
I would have taken the hotel room.
Can I say something here?
Airport
the way
Hilton.
that people are answering this question, it's because of you.
Okay.
The implication is that the guy was making a demand on his wife. He is not at all. He seems to be a totally reasonable person who forgot his ID. He's not saying to his wife, you must come get me, of course. He's saying that I lost my ID. She's the one who's creating a fuss around this thing, by the way. No, she is. She's creating the fuss.
She says she told him to get a hotel room and I'll pick you up in the morning.
Yeah.
And he said,
read the whole thing that
drop
she
dead.
said. That is not what, no, the first one is not true. She said, get a hotel, a-hole. And that's That is what set him off. And then the whole thing started just coming apart at the seams here.
Okay, started coming.
Jack,
Can this marriage be saved?
well,
Jim?
I know. That's another question. We'll do that at 2 o'clock. Jack and Danvers.
Hi, Jack.
What's your problem? Hello, Jack.
Did you have a wallet, Jim?
I do not have a wallet because I live in Cambridge. We're not allowed to have wallets. They were outlawed by the city council in 2003.
He has a fanny pack.
Who walks around without an ID, without a driver's license?
Exactly.
Well, maybe he changes pants. I mean, I don't know, Jack. What are you saying?
Okay.
That's it?
I'm saying my wallet lives in my pants. When I change pants, the first thing that goes is into the new pants is the wallet.
Well, that's a little too much
But, yeah,
information there, Jack, if you don't mind. But by the way, in my own defense, even though I do not carry a wallet,
What do you carry?
I carry in my. You really want to know?
Sure.
I'm hesitate to say this because there's going to be another basis for
Okay, we
criticism.
don't give a crap about your opinion.
She asked me, and Jack wants to know too from Danvers. In my left pocket, since you want to know,
Okay.
I have one credit card,
Uh-huh.
a license,
Oh.
in answer to Jack. I carry cash for tips.
Yeah.
And in my right pocket, this is where I shouldn't mention it, the only thing in there is my key card for the Tesla. That is it. Oh, Jack hung up. He was so disgusted by what I had. That is true.
In the right pocket is the key card for
For
my
the
Tesla.
Tesla.
There's going to be a demonstration of the Tesla thing again this
Yeah,
weekend.
yeah.
And the big
I'll be
demonstration.
driving to that.
Yeah, you better stay out of Dodge on that one. The big protester that got it wrong the
April
first time.
5th.
April 5th, yes.
Yeah.
Saturday, April 5th.
Let's
All
go
over
to
the country.
Galen Carver, welcome to the show. Who's the a-hole?
I'm not sure, but I have a similar story.
Oh,
with
please.
We're ready.
Please.
Miscommunication and lateness and
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyway,
Yeah.
early 80s, my husband, I moved back to Massachusetts. My husband would come up on a Saturday night from New York, and I would pick him up at the train in Providence, and he was due to come in, I don't know, 10 maybe.
Yeah.
And it's midnight, and I decide to drive back to Plymouth. It's 3 a.m. He says, I'm here now. And I said, I'm sorry, I'm not coming back. And, okay, so I was feeling bad.
Yeah, you should.
And I don't know how we resolved it, except I find out when I pick him up the next morning that he had been sleeping in a phone booth with a big comforter that he bought for me because he couldn't get a hotel room because the Pope was in Providence.
Oh, no. He was sleeping in a phone booth?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Gail.
He ended up with his quilt that he had bought for me, and then I feel like a chump. So,
Well,
yeah.
exactly. My point exactly. Gail is honest enough to say she feels like a Trump because her husband had to sleep standing up, by the way, in the phone booth. Gail, that was an excellent story. Thank you.
Are you still married, Gail?
We'll sit together since 1981, so
Oh, that's lovely.
He didn't hold
That's
it against you.
beautiful.
That's
You
a
don't know
stand-up
that.
kind of guy.
Thank you, Gail, for the call there.
Okay. Love you both, but Jim, seriously,
Yeah.
the husband is clearly the a-hole. The husband forgets his stuff and has the audacity to ask to be picked up. What is she supposed to do with the kids in the middle of the night? He can get one of those things called a cab. I think he should have gotten the hotel room myself, too, because it's too far to go in the cab, 90 minutes away. So
Marjorie's also chosen to leave out that the family has fallen on really tough times. And his position was, which I wasn't going to share because I didn't want to invade their privacy, he would have stayed in a hotel, but they're short on cash, living paycheck to paycheck. And so he felt a way to save money was for her to pick him up so he could stay at the in-laws house.
yeah,
you know.
Jim is adding that.
No,
That is
I'm not. I'm
that is
adding
not
nothing.
true
I'm
at
not
all.
adding it.
Suzanne from West Roxbury.
Suzanne.
What do you think, Suzanne?
Hello, Suzanne.
So I agree with Marjorie, of course.
Of
but
course.
I'd like to point out that the woman in the man's shoes would not ever expect her husband to come after her. She would say to him, "Don't worry about it. I'll get a hotel. I'll get myself there. You need to stay with the kids." The woman would take that on, whereas the man says, "Hey, here I am. Come and get me."
Yeah, what's wrong with that? Well, I get your point. I mean, that's who men are. I mean, it's not good. We're not proud of it. But no, Suzanne actually
Suzanne,
makes a solid point.
Thank
I'm
you for the
embarrassed
call.
to admit that's
Listen
true.
to Peter from Mystic.
What did he say?
Every time I listen to one of these Who's the A-Hole segments, I thank my lucky stars that I am single.
So I figured he was going to say.
And then, here's one. Coming from Natick, why don't we think of this? Why can't the husband just rent a car and they could return it to the airport when they leave?
Because one-way rentals are huge. Oh, because you have a car they were going to be there a week and a half. And a week and a half is you keep a car that you don't need when your wife has the family car or how did the wife get there, actually?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
That is a good question. Oh, she drove because she was ahead of him.
No, but she flew to Ohio.
Maybe she got a rental car.
She flew to Ohio.
Okay.
We've ruined this. Yeah. Annie in Boston.
He had the ID, though, by the second time he got
Can we hear Marjorie Taylor Greene just a little?
We don't give a crap about your opinion.
Thank you very much. Annie from Boston, you have 30 seconds. Go ahead. Hello.
I think this man is a genius. I think he's the a-hole, but I think he's a genius.
Why is that?
I think he had done this as a subversive plot so that he can get one free night at a hotel without having to deal with his in-laws or his two kids.
That is brilliant. What a way to conclude
time
this.
At the airport Hilton.
That's where what happens at the airport Hilton stays at the airport Hilton. Thank you.
That's right.
Okay.
And
Andy,
by the
thank
way,
you.
He did have an ID, you guys, when he got there the second
What was
time.
it?
So he could have rented
How do
the
you
car.
know he had an ID?
Because
of course he did the
home
same.
to get
I understand.
the ID.
Okay, well that's not
I was
relevant.
being corrected. I make enough mistakes. I have to stand up for myself.
Okay,
and I actually
fine.
don't make a mistake.
Jared, who's the a-hole?
So I'm with the wife on this one because if I'm the wife and I look over at my phone at 12:30 at night, I think I know exactly why that dummy's calling. And I
we don't
am
give
not
a
answering
crap
this.
about your opinion.
Exactly. Took the words
Did
right out of my
you
mouth.
really do that to me?
You know who that is? It's Marjorie Taylor Greene.
That's real, by the way, from
talking to a
yesterday.
British reporter.
I'll
Love
go
her.
right down there
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay.
Want to hear our most fun thing of the day? Even though it's nothing to do with the story. This is another refrain from Lloyd Bridges from Airplane.
Oh, Christ.
When he has a lot of substance abuse programs and there's a crisis at the airport and he's upset that he has to deal with his substance abuse problems the same day as the crisis. Here he is.
Well, I think it's better.
We're not going to play him?
We heard it already.
Oh,
this is the
who wants to
this is the
recreate
glue
it?
sniffing. Marjorie wants to hear glue sniffing one more time.
It's like I
Thank
picked the wrong week to quit smoking. It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking. It's like I picked the wrong week to quit amphetamines. It's like I picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
How
She's
juvenile
undone.
are we?
You are so undone right now.
It's really.
And remember how he sniffs the glue right there in the airport office and his hair just goes straight up
Well,
in
who
the
doesn't
air.
love a little glue?
Can you play that 11 or 12 more times, please, before the show's over?
Who doesn't love a good magic marker?
Exactly.
right?
Okay, what are you doing on what on the culture show thing?
So on the culture show, absent the thing, where we have Jeff Kinney, who is the author of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. He and his wife Julie are doing fabulous things in Plainville, Massachusetts, where they have a bookstore, and it's
That's where the
turned in-
casino is, isn't it?
Yes.
Or is that Plainfield? One of them. Whatever. Go
Well,
ahead.
anyway, I just know about their bookstore, which has become such a magnet for great authors, and so they have this 5-year plan, millions of dollars to revitalize the downtown. They love their town so much, and they know what they can do through books and
That's
beautiful
pretty
parks
great.
and
Wow.
cafes. So
That's really
they're going
neat.
to talk about that, just as he is celebrating his 300 millionth book sale, which is pretty
What?
incredible, of Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And
300 what?
300 million books sold around the world.
Well, there's a lot of wimpy children out there.
Oh
and they
my
want to read
God, that is incredible.
Exactly, because everybody's a
Was
wimpy
that story
kid.
in the Globe a month or two? Was that in the Globe at some point?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, what's the other thing?
And then we're going to be speaking with Amari Paris Jeffries. We'll talk about new ways to look at the nation's 250th, and then playwright Ricardo Perez Gonzalez about his play Don't Eat the Mangoes, which when I saw it a couple of years ago, I thought it was delicious and demented and all things fun.
Oh, good.
Enjoy the show. We'll be listening.
And you're right.
Jared
It's
Bowen.
the wife. It's the wife.
Yeah,
she
exactly.
She was the good person in this thing.
Okay.
Tomorrow, I want to say we're going to be joined by Congresswoman Anna Presley at 11 o'clock, and we're going to talk about everything that's happening with Trump, particularly
No,
this
we're not.
incident at
Actually,
Tufts.
we're going to focus on the one issue.
Incident at
Tufts,
Tufts. That's right. Yes, we are. Okay, keep up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. We have a lot of fun stuff on there.
TikTok.
Tomorrow, we're live at the Boston Public Library of
We
the
are.
Haydn and Handel Society, Live Music Friday. Local woman Sue O'Connell at Boston Medical Center, Dr. Catherine Gerger-Barnett, NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik about the congressional hearings on funding NPR. That's us. And our crew we want to thank as well. Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer John DeClaw Parker, our executive producer Jane Baloney. Special thanks to Patrick Lally for running our YouTube stream. Do you have something you'd like to say?
Yeah, I would do
Jim?
a shout out. Two of my favorite people are Juan Calderon and Maria Rondeau, who own Celeste and a great restaurant on Concord Ave, La Royale. For people looking to break from the pain, we had great jazz the other day on the air last Friday. Thursday night is jazz night at La Royale on Concord Ave. I would check it out. Fabulous food, fabulous people, and great music, and everybody needs a break, so check it out.
Okay, Jim Browdy.
You've been there, by the way.
much.
It's great. They are among great restaurants ever.
You know I never go anywhere.
You don't go anywhere.
I don't.
Thank you.
I'm Marjorie
Bring your
Egan.
ID when you do, though. No one gives a crap about
Okay,
your
we
opinion.
don't give a crap about your opinion.
Exactly. And
We don't. We
are
really
so
don't.
pathetic. I'm Jim
Thank
Browdy.
you for
We'll see you
tuning in.
tomorrow.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com. When a young, disillusioned doctor leaves the UK, she moves to South India and finds work at an understaffed and overworked hospital. Watch Good Karma Hospital tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org.